Let's get started. I'm Senator Rachel May. I am thrilled to welcome all of you here and grateful to my colleagues who have joined us. Our ranking member, Senator Rawlison, is here, and we're joined by Senator Brooke and Senator Webb. This is the Senate Standing Committee on Cities 2. And I am the chair, Senator Rachel May, and this is our hearing to explore the causes and effects of poverty and concentrated poverty in small and medium-sized cities and policies the legislature can implement to reduce poverty. I just want to say a few words before we get started about why we're holding this hearing. I would say the number one reason is because just last week, I guess, Syracuse was named as having the second highest child poverty in the country of cities of 100,000 residents and more. Sadly, every year, it seems, Rochester, Buffalo, Syracuse find ourselves in the top 10 cities on that sad measure. And if you go to some of the smaller cities like Binghamton and Utica, you get even higher poverty rates sometimes. So our residents of our cities are hurting, and we need to find ways we need to discover what's being done anywhere to help alleviate this problem, but also what we can do as a state to implement policies that make sense for the residents of our smaller cities. So I'm excited to have the people here who are going to testify, who are working in a number of areas that are relevant to poverty and alleviating poverty in our cities. Let me just do a few ground rules. We're going to have testifiers come up and sit at the table, and we've arranged people in panels roughly by topic, the area that they work in. We will give people 5 minutes to testify, and each senator can have 5 minutes for questions, and if necessary, we can have a second round of questions. So, as I said, the panels were crafted on theme and region, but mostly the reason for the panels was primarily to reduce the amount of time of just people coming and going. So I hope it will all make sense. And our first testifier will be by Zoom. So before we get started, though, I wanted to ask my colleagues, if Senator Ralston, do you have any words that you would like to say?
And sure, thank you, Chair, and I really appreciate the opportunity to be here today with all of you, our honored guests who are testifying. The purpose of this hearing is to identify the causes and effects of concentrated poverty in small and medium cities in our state. I'm thankful for the opportunity as a ranking member to assist this committee in its task, and look forward to hearing from the experts and the advocates that are here today, because poverty obviously is not a partisan issue. And as elected officials, we have an obligation to seek out what works best for all New Yorkers, taking into account the creative initiatives that are being developed at the local level. And one such initiative is the Poughkeepsie Children's Cabinet, where I hail from. It's a collaborative program between the City of Poughkeepsie School District. It was formed in 2020. It's also a partnership with the city government. And the Children's Cabinet provides a cradle-to-career pipeline for our city's young people. The goal is to raise student performance and reduce the likelihood that these school children and young adults will succumb to the poverty that we're going to be talking about today. As the former mayor of Poughkeepsie, I was honored to help get this program started, along with my good friend and partner, Dr. Eric Rosser, who has submitted testimony today. He's the superintendent of the Poughkeepsie City School District and a resident of the city of Poughkeepsie. The Children's Cabinet has had success, but there is much more to do to fight entrenched poverty in Poughkeepsie and other small and medium-sized cities across our state. This initiative, this Children's Cabinet, which again I'm very proud of, has caught the attention of our Lieutenant Governor, who I was with this morning, the State Board of Regents, where we actually testified for 2 hours this past February, the U.S. Department of Education, and the White House. Dr. Rosser correctly points out what we need is sustained funding support from Albany so that our other localities are not bearing the burden alone, because you cannot do it just at the local level, especially when it comes to funding. And I want to again thank you for the opportunity to identify the policies that work effectively at reducing entrenched poverty. I would end my remarks with two thoughts. Number one, work works. Assistance is more effective when it enhances those who have gainful employment and ultimately adds to greater likelihood of the economic mobility and development of the lasting social capital that can provide. And second, you can't manage what you don't measure, and it's not just enough to simply talk about investments. After all, individuals and businesses can have negative return on investments. So smaller cities and school districts may not have the resources to promote those initiatives that work without state support. But we have to get the particulars right, and we have to constantly assess what we're doing and the performance that it's actually giving to our children and families. It's not enough just to craft a policy or a program and then move on. We need to be consistent, because sometimes these then can become unfunded mandates at the local level without the state input. That's a problem. So cooperation and financial support is absolutely essential to our success. Entrenched or concentrated poverty is both a result and a contributor to lower educational outcomes. Research shows that up to 2/3 of student performance variance is attributable to factors outside the school. There's an 80-20 formula. 80% a child is outside the school, and 20% they're inside. So local governments and communities play an absolute critical role in the development and sustaining the life of children the way that we want that to happen. So again, as a former mayor of Poughkeepsie, our city developed this, proud of it, and the local approach to a statewide issue that demands our urgent attention, and I'm glad that we're going to be able to have this conversation today. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Senator Brooke, do you have an opening statement?
Thank you. And I want to thank Senator May for gathering us here in her capacity as chair of the Cities 2 Committee. I am Senator Samra Brooke. I represent the 55th Senate District and proud Rochesterian, and the only Rochesterian on our committee representing our upstate city. And as someone who's both a lifelong resident, grew up in the city of Rochester, I represent there now, I'm growing my own family in the city of Rochester, there are really troubling numbers that we see, things that we're not proud of, and that we'll hopefully dig in today as to the historical context of how we got there. But the truth of the matter is, in the city of Rochester, we are home to 3 out of 5 the highest, poorest zip codes in New York State. 3 out of 5 of the top 5 poorest zip codes in New York State. And on top of that, and I think of this, of course, as a mother as well with a young one, nearly 1 in 2 of our children are in poverty. And so when you look at statistics like that, and you look at a city that has so much to offer, you start to wonder what has failed. And so that's why I am so proud to be here today with Senator May and with our Cities 2 Committee, because we know that there are things the state can do. When we look at things like AIM funding, the city of Rochester has historically received less than its counterpart cities when you look per capita. When we look at what our healthiest and safest communities, where people are thriving, you don't see concentrated levels of poverty. In fact, you see greater investment. You see resources coming to youth development programs. You see things to help people get the education they need to actually take some of the jobs that we have in our communities. And so as we sit here doing this work, I'm hopeful that we will be receiving testimony from individuals and partner organizations from across the state, where we can really pull on that as we look at our legislative agenda and our budget advocacy going into January, to make sure that the state actually is showing up for some of our cities. Again, I think for a long time, the city of Rochester did not have a seat at the table. We did not have a unified delegation of legislators working together to make sure that we were tackling some of these issues. And I say that stops now. We have parents as legislators, we have advocates as legislators, and we have a group here who's very committed to making sure that this work gets done. So thank you all for joining us today, and I'm looking forward to the testimony.
Thank you, and I especially want to thank Senator Brooke, because Rochester is in the House today and because of a number of people you have invited, so I'm grateful for that too. Senator Webb, did you want to say a few words?
Yes, I will be brief. I want to, again, thank you, Senator May, and all of my colleagues who are here today, but also everyone that has made it their business to not only be here today, but those of you who continue to sound the proverbial alarm about the pervasiveness of poverty in our state and especially in upstate cities. So I represent Senate District 52, which encompasses Broome, Cortland, and Tompkins counties. And even prior to my coming into the Senate, I've done a lot of work around addressing issues around poverty, especially childhood poverty. And so in my district in particular, we have double the state average as pertains to children under the age of 18 that are living in poverty. Also in my district, Broome County is the third county in the state with the highest level of poverty. And so in lifting up these statistics, it also lets us know that poverty not only impacts everyone, but it is systemic, which means it requires a much larger strategy that is rooted in equity and inclusion, that requires us to look at not only policies, but also practices and financial investments to address it at its roots. And so I'm proud of the work that we've been able to do thus far just in this legislative session around expanding access to things such as school meals, but we know that's not enough. We know that we can and should do more. And so again, I look forward to hearing the testimonies of everyone here, and we will pursue as a committee and as a legislature. Thank you all so much.
All right, thank you to my colleagues, and let's get started. So our first testimony comes from Steph Silkowski, Director of Policy at the Bridge Project, joining us on Zoom. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. Good morning, everyone. So sorry I can't be there in person. Thank you particularly to Chair May and to all members of the committee for hosting this very important hearing. Again, my name is Steph Silkowski. I'm the Director of Policy and Strategic Initiatives at the Bridge Project, which is New York's first unconditional cash transfer program. Thank you all for using this hearing to bring attention to a critical issue facing New York's small and medium cities. Poverty, as the committee members noted, and particular child poverty, is all too high in New York and will likely worsen if current economic trends continue. Half of the top 6 cities in the US with the highest child poverty rates are in New York State, disproportionately affecting communities and children of color. In Rochester, Buffalo, and Syracuse, 1 in 2 children live in poverty. Many New Yorkers living in small and medium cities are unable to cover basic necessities and support their families, particularly in the face of rising interest rates and inflation. The total cost of raising a child through high school in the state has risen to more than $300,000, which is a $26,000 increase from just 5 years ago. At the Bridge Project, we're working to address urban and rural child poverty through a cash transfer program focused on supporting low-income pregnant and parenting folks and their babies from the critical prenatal period through the first 3 years of a child's life. We provide regular cash payments to participants, creating greater financial stability during a pivotal period for both maternal health and child development. And with close to $50 million in private funding invested to date, we have reached over 1,000 moms in New York City and Rochester, and we are opening up applications in Buffalo this week, this coming Friday. Initial research outcomes are very positive. Mothers in the program use funds to access prenatal and postnatal care, mental health support, and childcare, pay for necessities like diapers and formula, and invest in their children's future. This is consistent with research from other programs that shows recipients of cash are most likely to spend it on their family's primary needs, with no increased expenditures on alcohol, tobacco, or drugs. Research conducted in-house by the Bridge Project demonstrated that participants were able to achieve increased financial stability as a result of our cash transfer program. The work of our program is grounded in longstanding research and data proving that unrestricted cash is a direct and very effective way to alleviate poverty. This was shown on a national level with the overwhelming success of the expanded child tax credit, which lifted millions of children out of poverty. And the first month after it expired, child poverty spiked by 41%. The unrestricted cash intervention further proved how an investment in the earliest days of life can have multiplying effects. Studies have found that a permanent expansion of the expanded child tax credit would have generated 10 times the revenue at cost. Because of all of this, the Bridge Project has been so proud to partner with Senators Jessica Ramos and Sam Brook, a committee member, to introduce S4578A, a bill that creates a first-in-the-nation statewide cash transfer program known as the Mothers and Infants Lasting Change Allowance, which would bring needed resources to families in multiple medium-sized cities in the state. The program would be piloted by serving 15,000 mothers earning less than 200% of the federal poverty level, residing in areas of highest child poverty in New York State. 10,000 pilot participants will be chosen from cities with a population greater than 140,000, which includes Buffalo, Rochester, and Syracuse, and 5,000 participants will be chosen from rural areas in the state. The milk bill represents an opportunity and really an obligation to invest in our vulnerable population and our future generation by leading the fight against childhood poverty and towards an equitable economy for all through an unconditional cash allowance for mothers and infants. I urge all members of the New York State Senate to lend their support to this targeted and critical investment. The experience of Bridge Project moms in New York City demonstrates how critical this support can be. I want to close by sharing a quote from Alicia Lopez, who is a Bridge Project program participant and Rochester resident. She says, "It's tough being a mom in general. My daughter came a month early, so I wasn't ready when I had to start providing for her. I didn't have formula, diapers, wipes, all the things you need for a baby. And then in a lurch, I had to buy all this stuff in order to care for her. And that's what's hard about it. Some people have $500, $600 that they can just drop in the blink of an eye when emergencies happen, but a lot of us don't. And then we're looked at as less than or as an unfit mother simply because life didn't go to plan." We thank the New York State Senate for their commitment to ending poverty in New York State and look really forward to working with folks on this committee to lessen the burden for families, particularly those in our small and medium-sized cities. Thank you so much.
Wonderful. Thank you for your testimony. Let me start the questions. First of all, can you talk about some of the details of the program, the amount of money, and how long has it been going on?
Yes, thank you, Chair. So the
Each
program
person.
designed for a direct service program differs a little bit than what we've outlined in the legislative text. So on the direct service program, it is a 3-year program. Cash begins to flow during the pregnant person's late second or early third trimester. The dollar amounts differ between New York City and some of the other states in New York State. So in New York City, it starts at $1,000 a month for the first kind of half of the program, the first 15 months or so, stepping down to $500 a month to allow program participants to adjust to the ending of the program after 3 years. And in Rochester and Buffalo, we start at $750 a month, stepping down to $375. One addition relatively recently was the inclusion of an upfront prenatal stipend, sometimes in other programs referred to as a birth grant or a baby bonus, and recognition that, like you heard from Alicia's quote, there's a lot of upfront expenses. And so we structured the program to allow for an upfront prenatal stipend in addition to the monthly payments beginning in the second or third trimester. So folks can really catch up on some of those very costly high dollar baby goods. The program has been around for about 2.5 years. We are entering kind of like the final few months of our first cohort's time. And 2.5 years, of course, sounds like a relatively short time on this program. I think a couple of things to know. We were the first and we are now the largest program of our kind providing cash to babies and infants in the country. And the work, while kind of a cash allowance or guaranteed income might sound new and novel and kind of like a buzzword for folks, our country has a very long history providing unconditional cash payments, particularly through the child tax credit. So there's decades of research on the success of programs like ours that our program is really rooted in and embedded in.
And I don't know if you've had time, but are you able to track the impact on the health of the mothers and the babies, as well as the impact on local economies?
Yes, we are tracking all of the above. I think our very first cohort is a randomized control trial with the University of Pennsylvania Center on Guaranteed Income Research, and the results from that study have shown. I named one of them, kind of increases in financial stability. So that is judged by savings in a household's bank account, ability to pay for emergencies. We have also tracked in that first cohort rates of childcare usage and an uptick, housing security, and kind of movement from shelter to permanent housing, or the reverse, being able to prevent eviction in the first place. As the program has grown, we've moved our research in-house. We have a research director who's tracking all of the things that one might imagine: maternal health, infant health, prenatal and postnatal care, maternal attachment, mental health, particularly for the mother, and things like economic impacts. And so what we're finding both in the qualitative research and the quantitative research is that folks are able to both kind of provide for their families in a really incredible life-saving way. And also having more dollars in their bank account allows them to participate in the broader economy a little bit better. So that means that they're taking advantage of purchasing goods and services within their local communities, sometimes spending money at local restaurants to celebrate successes, which they would not be able to do before. And I think more broadly, the way that we are, the cash allows folks to potentially prevent evictions, to live healthier, more sustainable lives. That allows for less government expenditures on programs like Medicaid, potentially on food stamps. We don't view our program as a supplement to other government benefits, but certainly we're noticing that folks with kind of additional financial security are able to show up and parent in ways that they weren't able to before.
Fantastic. I'm just about out of time. I'll come back probably and ask a question about whether you plan to track, say, school success and that sort of thing of kids who came out of this program. But my time is up, so we'll pass it along. Does anyone else have questions?
I do.
Senator Rawls.
Thank you, and Ms. Sokowski, thank you for this discussion and your testimony. Just two questions, one on the front end and then one on the back end. So when you accept a mom into the program, do you have research, or are you looking also at the situations that they have found themselves in that qualify them for the program? So in other words, what are the things that have put them in the particular set of circumstances that you might not necessarily be addressing, because I understand exactly what the mission is, and I applaud you for that, but also helping us and others to say, okay, because this individual, this mom is here, she got here because of all these things that maybe happened to her previously. Do you track some of that? Do you keep data on that?
Yes, certainly. So we, from the start, when a mom is accepted into the program, we do about a 45-minute or 1 hour onboarding session with the mom, where we both kind of, outline the contours of the program, verify kind of eligibility into the program, and also just ask really open-ended questions about their financial situation. It is the first kind of like qualitative data that we begin to collect. And what you would imagine is that moms kind of arrive in financial precarity in a wide variety of ways. I think we have moms who are immigrants, new arrivals into the city. We have moms who have been in domestic or gender-based violence situations with no access to their own finances or capital. We have moms who are not able to access higher education and feel kind of stifled in their career readiness. We have a lot of moms who work unstable gig work or seasonal work. And so all of those factors on our direct service side really inform the types of programming that we offer moms. So a thing that I didn't know, because I really wanted to highlight kind of the real beauty and power of cash, is that we do offer wraparound supportive services to our moms through the duration of the 3 years. It's not a programmatic requirement. Not every mom takes advantage of it, but we connect folks to things like financial resources, budgeting, job training program, housing workshops, and kind of tenants' right workshops to address all of these other factors. And we don't aim to be the expert in all of those other issue areas, but there is a robust network of organizations and government programs in the state, and we're always looking to make sure that moms are taking advantage of those existing programs, or finding ways to both better themselves, get into a better place with their career and their finances, particularly because our program is just 3 years. It's meant to be a time limited program at the point of pregnancy and kind of the earliest days of a child's life, and we want to make sure that they're set up after the ending of our program in 3 years for longer success.
And thank you for that. So with that said, on the way out of the program, obviously, so many are in a situation where there is a sense of hopelessness, and obviously you brought that up, right? You're lifting them up through your program, and then getting out, back out there, so to speak. Maybe not the right choice of words, but it can get tough again. It does get tough again. We know that. So the aftercare from your care. Is there some methodology within your group? I said you're collaborating, of course, that they have someone or someones to stay with them for a longer period of time after they're out of your assistance program. So they have that ability.
Yeah, I would answer it in a couple of different ways, and feel free to cut me off at any point. I can be quite verbose. There are a couple of things that we think about when a program participant graduates our program. I think first and foremost, what's important to us is that moms in the program have connection to one another. So we're building an alumni network, which would be facilitated by folks in our organization, but really allowing moms to connect with one another, share resources, share jobs, share goods and services that they would be able to provide. That happens very casually throughout the duration of the program, but we're hoping to have it be a little bit more formalized at the point of graduation. The main kind of service that we are really focused on for folks graduating out of the program, particularly those in New York City, which is our first cohort that's graduating this upcoming summer, is making sure that their kids are enrolled in 3K. Our program, again, is meant to really be kind of a bridge in that 0 to 3 age range. 3 tends to be where some government programs kick in for small children. So making sure that folks are enrolled in 3K. And what we are also planning on doing is connecting each mother, again, only if they're interested in it, and see it as a resource, with kind of a broader case management person or benefits counselor at another community-based organization. So really important in our program. Again, we are not attempting to be experts in every issue area. We are looking to build a referral network with organizations and systems throughout the state. And particularly what we want every mom to do is graduate the program with a caseworker at a local community-based organization who can provide support long-term. And the very last thing I'll say is that on the research side, we are tracking outcomes after the point of graduation. So we have cohorts that are being followed longitudinally. So we are focusing both on kind of like child development outcomes after they graduate the program and mother outcomes. So we stay in touch with them to collect research and data to understand the longer effects of the program after those 3 years.
Thank you.
Steph. We need to move on. So have you got questions?
Thank you. And thank you, Stephanie, for your testimony. I obviously want to ask about, I don't know if this is on or if you can hear me, but I want to ask about the Rochester program. And I think you answered a lot of great questions that I had, but I would love to get an update. You shared with us the amount, how it would be adjusted, obviously, for Rochester versus the New York City program. But where are you in implementation with that? And just what are the next steps there?
Yeah, it's a great question, Senator. So when we first launched the Rochester program, we opened up applications this summer in July, and we had funding for 100 Rochester moms for the full duration of 3 years. So we have hit our 100 moms in the Rochester cohort, which is really exciting. So I think candidly, we are looking for additional private philanthropic dollars to be able to grow that cohort past those 100 moms. But Those 100 moms have been onboarded throughout the course of July and December. So we onboard moms on a rolling basis month to month, and first payments have been flowing for some moms, since August and September. For some moms, they would have received their first payment in December. So we are fully running in Rochester, and in Buffalo, we'll be using a similar model. So we have funding for 50 moms in Buffalo. We're opening up applications, and similarly, we'll be onboarding moms until we hit that number.
Thank you. That's great to hear. And then I was curious about some more data in terms of demographics, in terms of household types, renters versus homeowners. I don't know if you even collect information in terms of what kinds of jobs folks have. Obviously, also interested in racial or ethnic or language demographics. What can you share with us on generally who you have? What's the breakdown been?
Yeah, that is a great question, Senator. And I can follow up with the committee afterward with a detailed one-pager. I will speak in broad strokes on the data. So, and want to caveat it with I'm not looking at the data at the moment, unfortunately. So, as one might imagine, because kind of poverty intersects so heavily with racial and ethnic demographics, the vast majority of our moms, both in New York City and Rochester, identify as Black or Latina. It's somewhere over kind of 85%. That's not a restriction of our program. That tends to be where the neighborhoods where the most need is. Surprisingly, I think on mother age, this has been surprising to us. We thought that we would be getting much younger mothers into the program, but the most recent average age of a mother into the program is 28. Which is a little bit older than one might imagine. Despite kind of our income threshold in New York City being around kind of 52,000, and in Rochester, I think it's about 45,000. Because of the relationships that we've developed and the organizations that are helping us recruit, we're finding that the moms in our program have a much, much lower household income. The latest numbers are around $16,000 in household income for a year, which is certainly not enough to sustain a family. We do collect data on kind of like family structure and household structure. I will send that to the committee after the fact. We collect information on educational status, types of jobs, and we track those things both from the time that they join their program throughout the duration of the 3 years. So those are some very broad strokes, but I will follow up with a much more detailed demographic breakdown afterward.
That's very helpful. And I'll just end with this. Doing some quick math, just that I'm assuming if you're in this room, you get it, but in case you're listening at home, I think it's really important that we remember when we're talking about these programs, we are not talking about individuals and mothers in this instance, right, who aren't working, who are sitting at home, right, twiddling their thumbs. We're talking about people who have 1, 2, 3 jobs, and they're still making what you just said, $16,000 a year. If you do that quick math, you're looking at $1,300 a month, daycare averaging at $300 a week, then you've got diapers, wipes, food, formula, and rent and everything else that we are meant to pay. And so, obviously I'm a big supporter of this program and carry the milk bill, as we call it, with Senator Ramos. But I do think it's an important level set that we need to keep reminding ourselves and hopefully our colleagues when it comes time to make these, advocacy actions, because we are talking about people who have jobs in New York who cannot afford to live and are still living in poverty. So thank you.
Thank you for your testimony. I just have 2 quick questions. One, what is your plan to expand to other cities outside of the ones that you're currently in? And then, well, actually, 2.5. The other is with regards to the support that you receive from philanthropic organizations. What can we do as a state to support?
I appreciate that. On the first question, the honest answer is it's entirely dependent on funding. We are entirely privately funded. We have been since the start of our program. And so, how much we expand, where we expand is based on kind of funder interest. I think, I want to highlight some things that we're thinking about, both in 2024 and 2025. We have this very exciting Buffalo expansion, which I'm thrilled to do. We will start with these 50 moms, hopefully grow that program. As an organization, we have a keen interest in supporting rural communities in New York. So we will be pursuing private philanthropic dollars to potentially be able to support a rural cohort. And I would be really eager to work with members of this committee and others in the state Senate to identify kind of the right geographic area for this. There's a lot of research and data that shows that cash is actually even more effective in small cities and rural areas. And I really appreciate, Senator Webb, the second question on what you can do to support. I think for us at the Bridge Project, our ultimate goal is to not exist in perpetuity. So while we would be thrilled to partner with folks to receive public dollars to support a program like this, bring it elsewhere throughout the state, our goal is for full public adoption of a program like this. The milk bill is administered through DSS. That would not be money that's coming to us. We would not run that. So for us, our policy and advocacy goals really believe that to scale a program like this, to really meet the great need in New York State, a cash assistance program, particularly for moms and babies, should be run out of and funded sustainably through New York State government agencies. So that is our goal. That is what we're fighting for. Really thrilled to be working with Senator Brooke and Ramos on this great bill, and we'll be doing a push for it this upcoming session. And I want to note on Senator Brooks' earlier question very quickly. I think our program is generous, and also what we provide moms is not enough to supplant a total income. So we do not find that moms leave their job because of the money that we're providing. We track labor force participation data more broadly, but in any one of our cities or towns that we live in New York State, the $1,000 a month that they're receiving from us, or $750, is certainly not enough to force folks to stay home. So we don't see a negative impact on folks' job participation.
Thank you.
All right, well, thank you. Let me just say a couple additional things. One is I'm sure we would love to see the program happen in Syracuse too. But I will say, in addition to chairing the Cities 2 Committee, I also chair the Legislative Commission on Rural Resources. And with that hat on, would love to work with you on the rural piece of what you're hoping to do. So look forward to further contact in the future. And thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you.
All right, so our second panel is Sally Santangelo, Executive Director of CNY Fair Housing, Janelle Coleman-Grimes, and Nick Coulter from Person-Centered Housing Options. I got it. All right, Sally, we'll start with you.
No, but I can send them.
Thank you. Good morning. Thank you for the opportunity to be here, and thank you, Chair May, for the invitation. CNY Fair, I'm the Executive Director of CNY Fair Housing. We are a private nonprofit organization that is dedicated to eliminating housing discrimination, promoting housing opportunity, and ensuring equal access to housing for all people in Central and Northern New York. Our services include fair housing investigations, enforcement and litigation on behalf of victims of housing discrimination, education and outreach, and research and technical assistance to municipalities to improve housing opportunity in their communities. We are based in Syracuse, but our 17-county service area stretches from Binghamton to the Canadian border and is home to more than 2 million people. We are the primary fair housing services provider for 1 out of every 9 people living in New York and 1/3 of the population upstate. As a result of our extensive experience working on fair housing issues, I can confidently say that racial and economic segregation is rampant across upstate New York. It is exacerbated by government policies, and the New York State Legislature is not doing enough to combat the prejudice that forecloses housing opportunity for so many New Yorkers. The Syracuse metropolitan area is the worst in the entire country for racially concentrated poverty. A higher percentage of poor people of color live in economically segregated neighborhoods in Syracuse than in any other city in America. Buffalo and Rochester also rank in the top 10 by these measures. Upstate New York's worst in the nation segregation and racial concentration of poverty is a result of government policy. From redlining to highway construction to urban renewal, we have a shameful history of using public policy to segregate our communities more thoroughly and more effectively than any private acts of discrimination ever could. But these patterns are too extreme to persist solely because of policies from the past. Racial and economic segregation that goes with it in upstate New York is perpetuated by policies that you have the power to change. Primarily, zoning laws enacted by local municipalities play a determinative role in enforcing patterns of racial and economic segregation in upstate communities. Onondaga County is home to fewer than 500,000 people, but its housing market is governed by 34 separate municipal zoning codes. These local laws enforce racial and economic segregation by banning lower-cost housing opportunities such as townhouses, duplexes, accessory dwelling units, and apartment homes from 3/4 of all urbanized residential land in the county. The city of Syracuse, which is home to almost 2/3 of the people of color living in Onondaga County, is far more likely to allow these traditionally affordable housing types than any other municipality in the county. In the surrounding towns and villages, only 1% of the land is zoned to allow the construction of apartment buildings by right, just 1%. We often think of these laws as being about the types of buildings that can be built, but fundamentally, they are about who is allowed to live in a community and who's allowed access to the resources of that community. These zoning laws don't just constrain the private market's ability to provide a diversity of housing options in well-resourced neighborhoods. They also frustrate New York State's effort to promote fair housing by providing quality, affordable housing and opportunities in a variety of neighborhoods. When HCR or OMH or any other state agency funds the construction of new affordable housing, local zoning laws funnel most of that new building into the high-poverty neighborhoods where it's easiest to get approval to build multifamily housing. Because of our inequitable local zoning laws, state spending on affordable housing has worsened racial and economic segregation and the concentration of poverty in upstate cities like Syracuse. Where you live matters. When a lack of housing opportunity leads to extreme concentrations of poverty, it robs people of educational opportunity, economic opportunity, and social opportunity. But things do not have to be this way, and you have the power to change them. Land use laws do not need to enforce racial and economic segregation. And New York State has an interest in promoting open communities that allow all of its residents to thrive. And the state can and should take action to preempt local zoning laws where they cause segregation. The state can and should stop spending money on housing in a way that concentrates poverty. Guidelines for low-income housing tax credits and other programs that fund the construction of new affordable housing should prioritize mixed-income projects in low-poverty communities. The best time to make these changes was 70 years ago. The second best time is now. Upstate cities are growing for the first time in decades, and in Syracuse, the Micron announcement promises even more growth. Zoning laws will shape that growth. We need to make sure they create the housing diversity we need in order to create inclusive, thriving communities that are open to everyone. Thank you.
Thank you. If you I don't know if you have a preference. Ms. Coleman Grimes, would you like to go next?
Sure. Well, good afternoon, and thank you for allowing me the opportunity to come here and speak. My name is Janelle Coleman Grimes, and I'm the Chief Program Officer of Person-Centered Housing Options located in Rochester. So our core mission is to eradicate homelessness in Monroe County, and ultimately beyond that if we have the capacity. What I'd like to do is share a story with you explaining and detailing how someone can go from subpar employment to homelessness in just a few short months. I'll talk about an individual that we'll call Amanda. Amanda sought assistance from our organization after losing her full-time job at a call center located just beyond the city limits in Rochester. Her job's inconvenient bus access compelled her to use her extra funds to purchase a car, albeit in less than perfect condition. The vehicle met her needs and facilitated transportation for her and her 3 children. Unfortunately, Amanda faced a setback when her car's transmission failed, and the estimated repair cost was $3,500. This exceeded her financial means as a single mother to 3 small children that only earned around $33,000 per year with overtime. Her average base salary came in around $16 per hour, which is just a bit over the minimum wage that we're increasing to this month. Life's demands did not pause for Amanda, and her monthly rent for a 2-bedroom apartment in a secure building was $1,150. Determined to reside outside of the high-crime neighborhoods that plague the city of Rochester, she was now confronted with the dilemma of either repairing her car or paying her rent, as her salary simply did not allow her to do both. Concurrently, a rent increase of $350 per month was announced, bringing her total rent to now $1,500, a burden she simply could not bear amidst the ongoing emergency. Financial expert Susie Orman identifies Amanda as one of 2 in 3 Americans who are unable and unprepared for a financial crisis that exceeds $400. Faced with these tough choices, Amanda prioritized fixing her car and maintaining essential bills like expensive childcare, leading to late rent payments and accumulating fees. Naturally, eviction proceedings ensued, forcing her and her children into a homeless shelter in the very same neighborhoods that she tried so desperately to escape. Here, she encountered our homeless outreach team, initiating her unfortunate cycle into poverty. I'm here before you not to paint a bleak picture, but to convey the harsh realities many individuals confront. Amanda's situation could have been mitigated if not for an abrupt 30% rent increase within 1 month. We advocate for rental caps, preventing landlords and property owners from imposing unjustified rent amounts or arbitrary increases. Ignoring this type of consideration in the state of New York may result in more cases where individuals like Amanda strain the state's resources in overcrowded shelters due to circumstances that are simply beyond their control. Her willingness was there and her efforts were there. But without protective measures, deep-pocketed landlords may further enrich themselves at the expense of vulnerable tenants and despite the worthiness of their properties. Our deepest fear is that Amanda's name will ultimately become obsolete and it will just be another person. She will just become another person that falls into this very same cycle that we see on an everyday basis at Person-Centered Housing Options. Thank you so much for allowing me to share that.
Thank you. And Mr. Coulter.
Thank you. My name's Nicholas Coulter. I'm the co-founder and executive vice president for Person-Centered Housing Options. We were founded in 2015 to address a growing problem in our community around homeless outreach. The numbers that we're seeing are astonishing. So I come before you, this esteemed committee, to illuminate the pervasive and escalating challenge of poverty and concentrated poverty that grips our cities. Sally and Janelle spoke very well about these issues. This multifaceted issue strikes at the heart of our communities, hindering progress and well-being for our individuals and families. As someone deeply involved in addressing homelessness, I fear that without sweeping interventions, we may soon face a surge in street homelessness akin to what we experience in Western states. PCHO provides outreach, housing first, and health home care management. We partner with multiple state agencies, and we are very successful with our work. We boast a success rate of housing first at 96%. When we are doing true housing first, our folks, individuals and families, will stay in housing and be successful at that rate. Income disparities, the soaring cost of living, and escalating mortgage rates are erecting formidable barriers to maintaining housing stability. Landlords, as Janelle described, grappling with pandemic-related challenges, have been compelled to sell their units, triggering upsurges in housing costs. This divide is starkly evident on our streets and in the shelters across Rochester, New York. The staggering disconnect between local DHS shelter allotments and the burgeoning cost of rent poses an acute challenge that we face every day. Presently, an individual on TANF receives a mere $460 from our county. This includes rent and personal needs allotment. This allotment fails to align with fair market rates, especially in consideration of HUD-defined fair market rate at a one-bedroom apartment of $1,050. The stark contrast between these figures underscores a systemic issue that, especially for those falling within the 0 to 30% area median income bracket, just face every day. So we're seeing a rise in homelessness that I'll describe to you next. Currently, one-bedrooms and two-bedroom apartments are rising in cost. Prior to the pandemic, we could find an $800 apartment, secure that in a month, and we would have folks in housing. They may be paying 60 to 70% of their income, but we were able to do that. The consequence of this disparity now is that a sharp rise in homelessness has occurred in our shelters. Almost 9,000 placements are made in our shelters a year, and we're seeing that this roughly speaks to about 3,500 families cycling in and out of shelters every month. We have an average 5 to 7 months before a family is housed, causing an avalanche of homelessness in our community. At an average cost per day of $75 per person in shelters, we are spending at Monroe County over $8 million in shelter placement. We can do the math. It's simple. Where once I might have encountered 30 homeless individuals on the streets in Monroe County doing outreach myself, I am now encountering over 200 persons, including 11% in children, in their cars every time we go and do outreach. Just this past Friday, my outreach team said they found 193 people between encampments, abandoned buildings, and in their cars. Addressing the gap in financial accessibility, just as the bridge project described, demands a multifaceted approach, increasing funding to bridge the chasm between market costs and the financial capacity of TANF and Social Security recipients. Simultaneously, incentivizing landlords, which I know can be very challenging, through subsidies and augmenting the inventory of affordable housing, which Sally described, holds promise in mitigating homelessness. We need more housing in rural and suburban communities because the growth and need and demand for housing in our urban communities has skyrocketed. Mitigating concentrated poverty necessitates a paradigm shift. Suburban and rural communities grappling with rising housing costs and migration to impoverished locales must be incentivized to invest in affordable housing. Combating the NIMBYism and phenomenon is essential. As Sally described so eloquently, zoning and town board meetings often are disinclined to address these challenges, impede development, and perpetuate concentrated poverty in our cities. Decentralizing poverty through equitable housing distribution and integrated housing across communities is paramount. Housing stands as the linchpin for every single other thing that we encounter between healthcare, between education, and employment. I'll end with that.
Thank you. Thank you all for your testimony. I think
Thank you.
maybe I will start because there's obviously a through line here talking about zoning issues. I'm sure you're all aware last year at the state level there was a very prominent discussion begun by the governor about trying to intervene in some zoning policies, and there was a firestorm of opposition to it. So I would love to hear your ideas about this. I mean, I know from Syracuse, homelessness isn't necessarily caused by anything happening in the cities. It may be because prices are rising outside the cities, but people come to the city because that's where the services are. It's where the shelters are, it's where the public transportation is and other public amenities are. And so how do we, what are the mechanisms and ideally politically possible mechanisms for engaging all of the communities around our cities in being part of the solution? And I guess I'll ask Sally first. Can you be more specific about what you're thinking about ways that the state could intervene in some of these zoning issues?
Sure. So, you know, the issue with zoning is that it allows a handful of individuals in a community to stop the development of homes for hundreds. You know, just to give you an example, we had a proposal in one of the suburbs of Syracuse, 278 apartments that you know, could have been homes to 278 families. 10 people showed up at a meeting in opposition to it, and that project stopped in its tracks. And so one thing that I think is important to remember is that a lot of the opposition to the governor's proposal wasn't from individuals. It was from local elected officials. And their positions were not necessarily reflective of what the community members actually feel. Most people support actually loosening zoning regulations and the regulatory burdens that we currently have in place. Accessory dwelling units, one, you know, and kind of easier example where there is widespread support for accessory dwelling units. AARP actually did a survey showing this, that people want more housing options for their parents, for their kids, and they want to see that in a variety of ways. So I think there's a lot of those kind of smaller steps, certainly incentivizing those changes, but I think we have to be honest about what the opposition is. It really, you know, most folks don't actually have concerns about the specifics of a process. And I think it's also important to remember where those concerns are when we hear NIMBYism in a community. I've been to a lot of meetings, I've listened to a lot of meetings, I've read the minutes, and oftentimes there might be an initial opposition based on the traffic in a community. But then we hear sometimes the tone change, and we hear, you know, comments about the types of people who are allowed to live in our communities. And we shouldn't be giving in to that and accepting the fact that that's just the way it is and the way it has to be. The fact is the way that we have allowed zoning to develop our communities has caused all the problems that we're hearing about today. And we need to make difficult choices about how to change those in the future.
Thank you. Do you want to add
Yeah,
to
I'll
that?
jump in. So zoning and code are sort of intermingled, and of course, code requirements, I'll give you a few direct examples where communities have struggled to make multiple options, as Sally put, for there to be an increase in families and individuals and spaces for those. One specifically, we are developing a property that is an historic tax credit property that is an old department store in the Market View Heights neighborhood in Rochester, New York. We have a 3-floor building. The zoning requirements and code for that building did not allow us to be able to increase the amount of units in the property. We had to go with 15 units when I might have been able to fit 17 to 20 units in this property. The parking requirements in our local zoning code require that we have individual parking spaces for people that are likely never going to own a car. And so I had to get variances on that code in order. So as we stack these rules up against small and medium-sized developers, the costs of those developments continue to go up, which then relies on ESHI funding and homeless housing assistance funding, which also goes up. I've gone back to the state for construction increases in overage costs to the tune of almost $1 million because construction costs have gone up on a 15-unit project that should not be going up. And that's because of some of these rules.
Okay.
So on top of the fact that we can't break a normal city lot into 4 units that could be done with tiny homes, the zoning department and code will not allow those things. So these are innovative approaches to housing for the homeless as well as other people, but we can't do those things without state support.
Okay, I'm going to have to stop you there, but thank you,
Yeah.
and we can come back to this. Does anyone else have questions?
Sure. Thank you. And thank you for the opportunity to have this discussion today. Sally, this is a question for you. In reading your remarks, one of the things, and we know that, as the chair noted, and we all know that, the governor's proposals last year were met, and I'm going to repeat, with lots of opposition from all kinds of places. She's already said this year she will not be including that in the budget for a variety of reasons, one of which I think she said because it's an election year. Okay, so we know how that is not going to be included. But when you say that, and we know this, that many of the housing initiatives and better housing are then located in areas of poverty because there's the least resistance there. Right. And I'm not saying this is just, you take this because it's the best you can do, but however, is there something at least to be said that you are going to create new housing in an area where it is needed versus where I've heard from some folks, and I just did 7 years as the mayor of the city of Poughkeepsie, which has its challenges for sure. And there was many of the examples that you gave where I found in Poughkeepsie, opposition to certain housing initiatives in certain areas, but also housing being built. I represent the city of Newburgh, where there is new housing coming online in a variety of old factory buildings in different parts of the city, not just in one part, but in multiple parts, and in many of the parts are actually in, I would say, neighborhoods of need, but creating these options for people. So at the very least, that still needs to be done. Where you can create housing, you should create it.
Right.
Not letting, I guess, the perfect get in way of the good for folks with this housing first option, which I heard years ago when I was a member of the county legislature, and here all these years later, it actually works.
Finally doing it.
They're finally doing it. So, I mean, just some thoughts.
Well, I think, I think we often think of our community and other similar, the small to medium cities, as a single housing market, right? In Syracuse, it is really one housing market for those who have choice. When you're looking to purchase a house, and you really you're choosing between some different communities because you can choose that. But if you're poor, there is no choice. Mm-hmm. So it isn't one housing market. It is, your options are to live in the city. And the reason why the need is there is because we keep putting all the affordable housing there. So we just have perpetuated that need because, so it isn't automatic, right? And we perpetuate the poverty by then tying our school funding to property taxes, which then further exacerbates, the educational deficits that we see. So we keep perpetuating the cycle. And there is certainly a need for better housing, particularly in our cities. You know, when you look at issues like lead poisoning, and just the terrible conditions of a lot of our older housing stock that we see in each of our cities. There is definitely a need for better affordable housing, but we need, people to have choice and options. And the problem now is people have so few options that they end up being, having to rent from slumlords who have absolutely no concern for their quality of life. And the only way to change that is to give them more choice. And give them access to the educational, social, and economic opportunities that everybody else, searching for housing gets to choose from.
Yeah, and those are great points, and I appreciate that. And one of the things, and I'll end with this, Chair, is that the Hudson Valley, because its proximity to New York City, saw during the pandemic people moving north and taking any housing option that they could, which then was, boxing out other individuals, say, for upward mobility within those communities because it didn't exist.
Right.
And so there's also, where we've seen in the Hudson Valley, is that we need all kinds of housing choices because there are individuals in lower to middle income housing units that could be in market rate, but there's no market rate, so they can't go to market rate to open up that particular. And I'm sure that it's throughout the entire state and the Northeast and probably the country for that matter, based on all the things that we've seen. So it is definitely complicated. I just wanted to thank you for coming and look forward to having these conversations. There is a new dynamic that, these aren't going to be really dictated at the state level per se, and with the zoning issues, you're absolutely spot on that, those things definitely are barriers. And let me finalize with this, is that, it's unfortunate that many people fear things that they don't need to be fearful of.
Amen.
And I'll end with that. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks. Anyone else?
I have one quick question. For you, Sally, in your testimony, you stated that state spending on affordable housing has essentially exacerbated racial and economic segregation and also concentrated poverty. Can you just expand on that a little bit more?
Sure.
Just to give, and I'm looking for more specifically, like, were there like particular programs or just things of that nature that kind of brought you to that particular point?
Sure. So the low-income housing tax credit program tends to, has traditionally favored projects that are, one, it requires a larger scale and makes scattered site and mixed income developments very difficult. And it tends to favor projects that are in cities versus suburban communities. Oftentimes when we see tax credit properties being built in the suburbs, we see senior housing and we see workforce housing. But when it's built in the city, it tends to be targeted at oftentimes at lower income levels, or frequently nowadays in particular, you see a patchwork of funding like ESHI funding or other types of DV funding specifically that often is at much lower level, 30% or so of AMI. And it's required to cobble together those different funding sources because of, in order to make the numbers work. To develop those projects. So for example, there's right now in the city of Syracuse, a project being built, 120 some units, 50 are targeted with separate funding through ESHI funding. And so that has, and when we see attempts to build, if there are any attempts to build, oftentimes developers aren't even trying. Because they know the opposition in those suburban neighborhoods is going to be too great. So they don't even try. Or when they do, they face opposition and then quickly change. There was a proposal in one of the suburbs in Onondaga County to build a project that was a tax credit that was going to include 6 units, just 6 units, for individuals with a mental health diagnosis. And there was neighborhood opposition, a very contentious meeting at a local library, and they pulled that aspect of the project and switched it to frail elderly. And that there are people in that community with severe mental illness that need that housing that are not going to get it. So the state needs to do better about making sure that that we're building in places that developers are pushed to move forward with those types of projects, and frankly, given the support to move forward. It can be hard for the developers, you're trying to, you want to be a good neighbor, and you're going into this community and everyone's screaming at you at a meeting. And of course, the town board and the planning boards and zoning boards are not, they're going to respond to that. They have to be elected and they're going to respond to that. It's in many ways a rational, sometimes you can see how it would be a rational decision. And so we have to find ways to, provide them the support they need to make those tough choices. But, again, the LIHTC funding rules in particular need to have some more flexibility. So, if there's an apartment complex being built in a suburban community, we should be able to make 15 or 20% of those units affordable in easier ways than we currently have. We just don't have a system to do that right now.
Thank you.
I'll go quickly. Thank you all for being here today and for your testimony. It was wonderful to see you again from our committee meeting earlier this year. Believe it or not, that was still 2023. And of course, to have Rochester representation, and just, want to share how much I respect the work that you all do, and I've been able to see it out in the community, meeting with neighborhood associations, talking to community members to make sure that where we are creating these programs and these housing options, that they are welcomed into a community and that they understand that these are their neighbors that are going to be housed there. There was something that I wanted to ask you, thinking about when person-centered housing started, 2015 to now. You've had almost a decade in this community to see how needs have evolved, the results of the global pandemic and what COVID has done. And so I think that in a lot of since I came into office in the middle of a pandemic, I've only known this. I've only known, unfortunately, great suffering and even heightened levels of poverty. And that's how we've come to this work, as to how do we fix these things and address them for those who need it most, because we know that actually will help our entire economy and our entire community and our entire state. So I'm curious if you want to share what you have seen on the front lines in places like Rochester and Monroe County about how the needs have changed over the last 8 years, and perhaps even more acutely since 2020, and how the work has had to evolve to address that.
That's a great question.
Go for it.
We'll play off of each other. So in 2015, to kind of give you an idea of what it looked like, there were two of us starting this organization. We could go to every single homeless encampment and location where people were sleeping. We could find them, locate them, engage them in services. Generally, the population looked like a population that you would typically think in your head would be homeless. Somebody who might have severe mental illness, someone who had experienced some substance use, folks that were not quite fitting into the system the way we had planned it to be. They couldn't get into SPOA services through mental health. They might not fit in a shelter, etc. We had, roughly speaking, about 800 people in a shelter on any given night. That seems like it's not much. Well, let's fast forward a little bit and look at what that looks like now. Generally speaking, I'll go dial back a little bit and say that housing at that time for a one-bedroom apartment was anywhere between $650 to $800 per month. On Social Security, at the monthly rate of about $1,000, you could go to social services, get a security deposit, pay for that month of rent, and be okay. And we could work that channel with the person. Now, we can't do that. The monthly rent, like I said, is around $1,050 to $1,200 monthly for a one-bedroom or sometimes a studio. And this is in a market that traditionally had been pretty reasonable. So our rates for income have not gone up. Our clients have increasingly had more costs. And now, after the pandemic, we're working with families, as Janelle described, where their income is now below the monthly rate of an apartment. We've seen a huge increase in opioid use on our streets, and doing Housing First, although we move people in with those issues, have been challenged every day by folks that are struggling with drug addiction. Yes, we've improved, we've gotten people in treatment, and we get people in treatment every day, but we don't have overdose prevention centers. We don't have safe use sites. Those are places where we could be doing outreach rather than watching people with abscesses die on our streets, not getting into Housing First programs. So we've seen a lot of challenge. Of course, it has been very difficult for our staff to navigate this process. And like I said, we've seen 200% to 300% increase. And now, I never saw a child on the streets in our community. This year, 11% of our total is in cars. I've never seen this. So, this is the issue. I'll let Janelle talk for a few seconds, but.
Well, actually, I need to cut you off, although I
sorry.
can use my time and say, if you want to add something, Jill, that's
Yeah, I
fine.
just think right now we have more employed people that are homeless than we've ever seen before. We have folks that are actually employed full-time doing similar work to the work of our housing stability coordinators and case managers that actually qualify for the very same services that they're able to implement. And that's not something that we had seen before. Quite frankly, it's a shame that that's even the case, but when people are advocating for higher pay and higher wages, they're also simultaneously talking about lower rents and things that are more affordable for them. But again, at this point, we have more employed folks that are actually homeless that do not look like the traditional person that Nick, kind of spoke about. They look like you and I, however, they don't have a place to go home to at night outside of their car.
Right.
Excellent. Excellent.
Let me have one follow-up question for Sally, because one thing we didn't talk about is the size of apartments, like the access to two-bedroom or especially three-bedroom apartments that a family may need. How can HCR help with that? How can state policy help with more access to that kind of housing?
Yeah, I mean, we are seeing this huge increase in family homelessness in particular. One of the issues with this cobbling together of resources, a lot of times those targeted units are one-bedroom apartments, and particularly like the Isha units. So certainly, we do need to see larger units and better options for families, in every neighborhood that we're building. But certainly larger three-bedroom units, they are usually a very small percentage of any project. And in the market, our market rate housing is also, we see a lot of one- and two-bedroom apartments being developed. And with Micron, in particular, we're talking about this potential huge increase, and there's just this kind of assumption, like, well, families will live in houses, and single individuals will live in apartments, and we really need to rethink that in a lot of ways. But definitely making sure we have a variety of housing types and other housing options is necessary. We tend to be very, because it's cheaper to build more one-bedroom units, and then you can count. You want to count your units and reach this so many. It makes it more difficult to build those larger units that we need for especially a lot of the growing refugee population, new American population that we have in a lot of our cities that we see.
Thank you. All right, well, thanks to all of you for the work you do and for your testimony here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And let's move on to panel 3, and I think after this one, we'll take a little break, probably. We have Allison Lake of the Westchester Children's Association and Melinda Person from NYSET. And I'm going to be stricter about time here because this is taking longer than we thought. Melinda, did you have a written testimony for us?
Yes, they have it.
All right. Ms. Lake,
They handed it up.
would you like to start, Ms. Lake?
Sure. Yes, it's good afternoon. My name is Allison Lake. I'm the Executive Director of Westchester Children's Association. We are a multi-issue children's advocacy organization, and our mission is to ensure that all children are healthy, safe, and prepared for life's challenges, regardless of race or zip code. I want to thank you for the invitation to present to the city's 2 committee. Westchester County is a tale of 2 counties, often perceived as a homogeneous, affluent community just north of New York City. It is, however, a county of stark contrast. Over 20% of households are low income or living in poverty. Many of our urban communities experience the all too familiar inner city ills, including disparate graduation rates, unstable housing, food insecurity, unemployment, and poverty. 40% of our neighbors live paycheck to paycheck, according to the United Way's ALICE indicator. 54.5% of residents are rent burdened, spending more than 30% of household income on rent. Cities across the state are hurting, and cities in Westchester are no exception, following the state pattern with children suffering higher poverty rates compared to the rest of the population. The 5 cities of Westchester with the largest concentrations of child poverty are Peekskill at 7.6%, White Plains 13.1%, New Rochelle 14.6%, Yonkers 17.1%, and Mount Vernon at 21.4%. 3 of our cities, Yonkers, Mount Vernon, and Peekskill, have median income for families with children under 18 below the state median of $88,000. 2 of our cities have some of the highest population densities outside of New York City, with Yonkers at 11,558 people per square mile, and the 4.4 miles that make up Mount Vernon, home to 71,000 people, has a density of 16,328 people per square mile. Resources to smaller geographical areas matter and can positively impact more people. Westchester Children's Association's 2023 Children by the Numbers Data Bulletin, of which I attached to my testimony this morning, released this month, shows the particularly stubborn racial inequities of poverty. 80% of children under 18 who are Black in Westchester are below the poverty line, 73% for multiracial children, and we contrast that with 42% of white children who are below the poverty line. Systemic racism in housing was noted in your invitation, but similar structural barriers have historically existed in health, education, employment, you name it. And so we must be bold in our fight against racism and be sure chosen policies are moving us in the right direction towards the arc of justice and equity. In addition, we have to acknowledge the rising cost of living for all of us, particularly in a county like Westchester, where paychecks just don't match up to the high cost of living. I am also on the board of nonprofit Westchester, which has surveyed government contracts that don't offer a livable wage. We need equitable contracts. Research tells us children living in poverty have lower education outcomes, poorer health, both physical and mental, more contacts with the criminal justice system, and limited career opportunities. The mental health crisis we hear about daily is real. According to the US Census, nearly 8 out of 10 adults living in New York's metro area in households with children who report often not having enough to eat, reveal feeling nervous, anxious, or on edge every day. We can do better by our children and families. I am also here as a Senate-appointed member of the Governor's Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council, and you'll hear more from my colleagues a little later, when we're researching what works with the Urban Institute. But we have this incubator of the COVID pandemic, which showed us that putting money in the hands of families lifts them out of poverty. The federal child tax credit is credited with cutting child poverty by nearly half nationally and in New York State. Families know what is best for them. We just have to give them the tools. I hope you will support the Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council's recommendations that include robust refundable child tax credits and child allowances, and we understand that this is the most effective strategy for reducing child poverty. Housing voucher programs, nutrition supports including school meals for all children, continuous Medicaid, and CHIP for 0 to 6. Today, we need policy and budget allocations that move the needle for children and families across New York, and I look forward to working with you to make this happen. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, Chairperson May, the Senate Standing Committee on City Members, and those in the audience. My name is Melinda Person, and I am president of New York State United Teachers, and we represent nearly 700,000 members across the K-12 and higher ed education system, as well as healthcare professionals. Our members are on the front lines of dealing with both the causes and effects of poverty in children and families across the state, so we are especially grateful to you for your leadership in taking up this subject. Most of the discussion about student outcomes and achievement centers on what happens at school and in our classrooms. And NYSET has long advocated for school funding to address those needs as to the extent that we can in our schools. But we want to also lend our voice to the conversation about what is happening outside of the school setting. In fact, 2/3 of the factors that impact childhood outcomes, chronic absenteeism, graduation rates, these are things that happen outside of school. Things like housing insecurity, food insecurity, not having access to dental care, things like that. And we need to acknowledge that there's a broader spectrum of challenges facing our children outside of school. We hear time and again from our members that it's nearly impossible for a student to concentrate on learning when their basic needs are not met. The statistics are sobering. 1 in 5 children in New York lives in poverty, a rate that escalates to 1 in 3 among children of color. And our members report that chronic absenteeism is most often linked to basic needs, such as the shame that students feel from lack of clean clothes or access to menstrual products. Our educators and school staff often go above and beyond to try and meet the needs of their students, but we need to do more. But poverty is a systemic issue, and it requires systemic solutions. We are currently developing a range of proposals to address childhood poverty on behalf of our union, and we look forward to partnering with many of the folks in the room who have been doing efforts around child poverty reduction since the governor's signed the Child Poverty Reduction Act. One such proposal that I want to focus on today is community schools. And the community school model connects communities with wraparound services for students and their families at school. It is a whole family assessment. We look at mental health struggles, housing struggles, lack of primary care, students who have never seen a dentist, the lack of school supplies, food, the need for access to laundry facilities. Anything that a family needs that is a barrier to learning, the community school model addresses, and they all look different. Community schools can succeed in an urban setting, in a rural setting, in a suburban setting, because they are particularly tailored to unmet student needs. Now, Senator May, you and members of the Education Committee have seen firsthand how this holistic model is lifting up communities across our state. Our members know that many of the student behavior concerns that may come up in a classroom are often a manifestation of these unmet needs. And the community school model is transformational because it creates hubs where students and families can connect with much needed support, meals, health and dental care, and all of their basic needs. Our members tell us that an important element of this model is the care and intention that goes into destigmatizing need. Kids need, and their families need to be able to ask for help without it being something that they're criticized for. Community schools also connect students and their parents with ancillary supports such as transportation or translation services. So when a family gets support from a local provider, they can reasonably continue receiving services for the long term. This creates sustainable success for families and New Yorkers and for the organizations that serve them as well. The most crucial role of the community school is the role of the community school director. This is the person who connects the needs of the students to providers in the community. Despite their vital role and the demonstrated success, only 2% of school districts currently employ such a community schools director. We have seen that the investment in these positions promises substantial returns. In New York City, for instance, each $100,000 invested in a community school director generates over $600,000 in services and grants, a remarkable testament to the value of leveraging community resources for the betterment of schools. The research has been clear. Community schools increase graduation rates, they increase student engagement, they lower absenteeism, they make for healthier students and families. Currently, New York State provides $250 million in set-aside funding for community schools, but each year the legislature has overridden that language, and so the amount dedicated to community schools has been relatively minimal. We are asking, therefore, for a specific $100 million in categorical aid to potentially double the number of schools utilizing the community school model. This money can support the hiring of community school directors in each location to lead this work and bring resources where they are needed the most. I will leave you today by asking you to imagine public schools the way educators, students, and families see them, as the center of their community, where every child, regardless of their background and socioeconomic status, can learn free from barriers imposed by poverty. Poverty is not inevitable. It is a policy choice, and we can fight back. We know how to do it, and these decisions are decisions that are made here at the state and national level, and we're so proud to be here to support you in advocating for our students. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you both for your testimony. So you and I were at a community school just a week or two ago and saw the amazing things that can happen when you have those sorts of wraparound services. But I'm going to push you a little bit because where I live in Syracuse, I'm about a mile away from a high school that has about a 80 or 90% poverty rate and a 50% graduation rate, and it's about 90% kids of color. And I also live maybe a mile and a half from a high school that has about a 5% poverty rate and 100%, close to 100% graduation rate, because it's right across the city line in one of the suburbs. So I understand the community school model. I totally support it, but it feels like both of those schools should be in the same community. We shouldn't be separating communities. There's one community that's got a lot of resources and another community just right nearby that doesn't. Is there any talk? I mean, I grew up in the greater Boston area in the 70s when there was violent reaction to any kind of busing or efforts to desegregate schools. I understand that that's a very difficult thing to talk about, but can we talk about a sort of a larger idea of community schools that would potentially marry those two schools together and think about how do we create some bigger way to really see all of our kids as part of the same community in a way. Does that make sense as a question? Is anybody
Yes.
asking those questions?
Yes, I've actually been speaking to an organization in Rochester, Great Schools for All, that has been for almost a decade now pushing for an approach to magnet schools that allow districts to come together across school district lines. So it would bring urban, suburban, and even potentially rural school children together in a voluntary magnet school program. And by using theme schools or other approaches, it's one way to bring diverse socioeconomic status student clientele together. And they've been pushing for this for several years, and I think they're very close to being able to advance a proposal of creating this type of school in Rochester.
I'll also say the governor was in Syracuse last week for the groundbreaking for our STEAM school, and you were there too.
Yes.
And the reason I pushed so hard for funding for that was because it will be a county-wide school that will have kids from the city sitting side by side with kids from suburban districts. But
It's very important that our students are with a diverse student population. This is how they're going to be prepared to live in the diverse, pluralistic democracy that we have here in this country. And so the model in Syracuse and what they're pursuing in Rochester, we fully support.
Thank you. And then when we talk about community schools, I don't know if this is, how much this is happening in Westchester, but the kinds of supports that the kids need seems to have changed over time, and we have a lot of kids who they need laundry services because they're coming to school, wearing the same clothes for weeks on end and getting bullied for it, or food to take home to their families, or those kinds of things. Have you seen anything, any new issues arising in the last year or so that you think, either of you, that we should be supporting that maybe isn't on our radar?
I appreciate the question, and particularly sort of looking at the holistic nature of children and what they need. You'll see in our data bulletin, one thing that we did new this year was to get data from local organizations like Feeding Westchester, which I know will also present here later, but getting at food insecurity, clothing insecurity, because these do impact school success very much for children. I also know in terms of community school models, and it was years ago, one of our communities, Port Chester, that had a community school, and that connected also with one of the federally based health centers, because that's a model that I think continues to work. And as we are continuing to see increased mental health needs for kids, I do think that that is a model, bringing those sort of social and emotional supports into schools, but also in the out-of-school hours, after-school programs, summer programs, et cetera, would be some new models. And so, increased funding in youth development areas to allow for those social and emotional supports, I think, would be key.
Thank you. Go ahead.
All right. Thank you both so much for being here. And as a representative in Western New York, it's great to hear some of the things that are happening in Westchester, and I'm going to take this home so that we can also, I think, learn from each other, even on a local level. But I want to make a quick comment, and then if you want to add anything, Melinda, in terms of some of NYSET's approach and what you've seen. But I think that it's, and of course I'll preface it by saying, public school graduate here, daughter of a teacher, and I was one of those students who was bused an hour to get to a different school district, and that has shaped me for the rest of my life, of understanding what true equity in education needs to look like and should look like. And I have to commend, NYSET, because I think that our educators and those in our schools are truly on the front lines, and so you can't ignore when you have 1 in 3 children of color living in poverty. That's not theoretical to you, that's not a statistic, that is their everyday. And I think it's important that we continue to understand what poverty looks like, especially in our children. And that looks like so many of the things we've heard today, right? And when you show up to the place you are for 7 to 8 hours a day, you really can't ignore it. It comes out in your test scores. It comes out in your ability to pay attention. It comes out in your irritability. Who doesn't get irritable when they're hungry, right? And we're well-adjusted adults. Now imagine being 7 and not having eaten, right? Or having had maybe a high sugar food and now you're crashing during math class. And so that's why I think it's so important that a voice like NYSED is talking about how we're combating poverty. And I was talking this weekend with a friend in a different state, and she organically started talking about community schools. And she's looking at that for her own daughter and the power of them. And so, I guess, we've talked about the different pieces that the community school can offer, but if you can share, and you maybe have heard some of these stories from some of the schools, but I'm thinking about the individual we named Amanda that the person-centered housing shared with us, but, do you have anything that can help us paint that picture? Because I think you are talking to the converted, and we understand the need, but I think it's important people hear, like, what that means for, let's call him John, or Edgar coming into school, these kids, and how it can change how they interact with their education.
Sure, I think one of the most important things is that community schools support entire families. I was visiting a community school in Greece, right in your neck of the woods, and in that particular school, the community school director was not only providing translation services to the family, they helped the parents to get a job, right? They helped put them into contact with an agency that did placement services, right? That is unrelated to the educational program, but that parent now has a full-time job and can support their family, and it's making a difference for that child. So I want to be really clear that community schools look different everywhere, but that's the beauty of them, because they arise out of whatever needs are existing in that particular community. When I visited East, the community school in Rochester, they have over 100 different community agencies working with that school. And these are intentional relationships. It doesn't just happen. Organizations need to be invited in, and you need a person to actually do that collaboration work. And it creates a seamless relationship between community and the educational providers. So I would say that is, I could tell you stories upon stories of the impact that community schools have made for kids, but it really is about supporting the entire family, and not just about getting those test scores up.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that.
Thank you both for coming. And my first question is, comments are for Allison. Looks like a great organization and what you're doing in Westchester, and that collaborative approach. And obviously the statistics are sobering about what you're facing. And obviously we face similar things in Dutchess and Orange County and Putnam County to some extent, but at a lower number. It's still the same thing. And as we're hearing about this upcoming budget, and obviously really won't know the details till the governor releases it, but is calling for reductions currently in the current fiscal year with state agencies who we talk to on a variety of different topics and what they may be facing coming into the new year, and then trickling down to schools, organizations like the association. What I would hope is that because you are in this world and you know it better than I and others, that you will give us that guidance on where that money should go, the money that is there. And obviously the negotiations take place, and then there is a budget. But there are so many things that you all do that are so critical that sometimes with one of them not being fully funded or funded at all, the other initiatives can be challenged. So I say that just as a statement to you, Allison, and of course to you, Melinda, that need that guidance, and hopefully we'll be knowing that in the next few weeks. Sure. Where that's going to be. And so, but as far as this year's budget, have you seen any reduction at all when we've been hearing sort of these things about agencies being told to hold the line. Has that trickled down at all to you, where you're at, and the organizations that you work with?
So in Westchester, they are just sort of finalizing our county budget, and certainly, the departments, as you said, whether it is our social services or community mental health, are all impacted by that. I think particularly for the increase in resources that government saw sort of right during the pandemic, and those sort of supports now coming down. And I think our agencies have been very careful about the sustainability of programs, because it's nothing worse than, right, to put program in place and offer families something, and then next year, oh, sorry, we don't have, sort of the funding for that. So around our county budget, I will say that with partners, we have been able to really uplift the priorities for children and families that are at the low poverty level. Housing, which we heard earlier, and I know there's more people to talk on housing, really rose to the top. And so at the county level, that does remain a priority, and so have not, as I said, there's not a final budget for going forward, but have not heard any sort of cuts to that at this point. I also just, sort of appreciate your comment about understanding the interplay between all of these things. And one thing that we are doing on the Poverty Reduction Council, I mentioned having Urban Institute sort of run these different models and scenarios. So what happens when you do a housing voucher? What happens, in conjunction with a child tax credit or child care subsidies and things like that, to really understand how this is going to benefit families, and they don't, gain $1 and then lose some other support on the other hand, the cliff that people have spoken about. And so I'm anxious for that research too, and I appreciate the opportunity to begin to share that with you and with the full committee, so that whatever policies that we put in place, we are sure that they are uplifting families and not setting them back 2 steps.
Yeah, I mean, I said earlier about you can't manage what you don't measure, and this measuring tool is going to be valuable for all of us. The whole ecosystem of education and communities, and getting to the community school model. I remember, after becoming mayor in 2016, we were advocating together, city government and the school district, for community schools in the city of Poughkeepsie, which we now have, and we have a community school director, just received $2.5 million in federal aid, which is going, and under the leadership of Dr. Rosser, that is moving forward, because there's no doubt, there has been a lot of discussion about, well, we need places for children. Well, we've got them. And there's school buildings throughout a community. We need a new community center. Well, why don't we do something with the school building? Because that can be, operated in some communities for 24 hours a day, depending on, what they're able to do and the support that they get. And I talked about, my colleague said about the converted, right? We're the converted. Well, I was already sort of converted, but I really became converted after spending so much time within the Poughkeepsie City school system. And right next to City Hall is Morse Elementary School, which has the highest need of any elementary school within the city, and to the teachers and staff that are there that do so much for those kids above and beyond teaching them. Thank God they do that, because it really matters. And I was just curious, and I'll end with this, is that, state ed, the Board of Regents, community school model, what type of support or guidance, or to the point of saying, no, we need to do this, not necessarily statewide, but especially in urban school districts like a Poughkeepsie. Is there enough push for that or not?
We're going to leave that as a rhetorical question, because
and we can follow up on that, Melinda. Thank you. I appreciate that. I'd love to know how you feel on that. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.
Really quick, thank you both for being here. And this could also be a rhetorical. Definitely very curious, especially in districts like mine, with regards to community school model. I know there's been some effort through like Binghamton University with our local Binghamton City School District to have a community school model, but I'm curious, like legislatively, in other ways, what we can do to actually actualize what you put in your testimony, Melinda, around the initial step of the assessment. And also want to thank you publicly for all the work that you've been doing and helping me and my district with our small city schools, because we definitely appreciate it.
Thank you. Well, beyond the $100 million investment, that is intentionally designed to incentivize districts to have the startup funds to establish their community school. What we found is that when you start a community school, there's a planning period where they bring in folks from the community, from the county. In Poughkeepsie, they have a whole council of local electeds and community-based organizations, right, that all came together with the educators, and they said, let's do a needs assessment. What are the barriers to learning that our kids are facing? What are the things that we need to address? Then they put a plan together, and then the community school director goes out and builds those relationships with community organizations, with county organizations. They go out and find a dental provider who's willing to come in one day a week and set up shop right in the school building in some space that already exists, right? But the initial resources to get the school started, that's what these funds would be used for.
Thank you.
Yeah.
All right, thank you both. This was great. Really appreciate it. I think we're going to take a short break here for a few minutes. So we can get started. Nobody's paying attention. All right, Leo, you ready to go? We'll let Samra come when she comes. Folks, we're going to start up again. Bring the lights down or something. Okay, we're ready for panel 4. Kate Breslin from the Schuyler Center and Pete Novosny from the Children's Agenda.
All right. I'm kicking a cold. Do we push it till it's green or leave it red? Does it?
Okay, I'm going to ask you, I don't think you have to do anything. I think they'll
good.
turn it on for you. Yep.
Okay, hi there.
Hi.
My name's Kate Breslin. I'm the president and CEO of the Schuyler Center for Analysis and Advocacy. We're a 151-year-old nonprofit organization dedicated to data and policy analysis and advocacy in support of public systems that meet the needs of disenfranchised populations, including people living in poverty. And we're so appreciative of the invitation to be here today, so thank you all. And I've loved your questions and engagement. It's so different than like the budget hearings, so thank you. I want to start with just a couple of mentions. Schuyler Center will be hosting a State of New York's Children event on January 17th, right here in the Legislative Office Building, with a deep dive on data related to New York's children, economic security, health, well-being, et cetera. Over the last 6 months or so, we've had monthly panels exploring issues related to child poverty, and several of our panelists have been here today as testifiers, Steph Silkowski, Allison Lake, Jamila Michener. And the links to those are all available on our website, so I would encourage you to check those out, including one we did just last week about guaranteed income programs. And we tried real hard in our testimony, I won't read it all, to make sure there are links to really good, important data. And so that testimony is in your hands, and also it's available on our website. So we mostly have focused on child poverty. I think it's important to understand that we're not going to move the needle on child poverty without getting to the adults in their lives too. So Passed nearly unanimously by the legislature and signed by Governor Hochul in 2021, the Child Poverty Reduction Act is legislation in which New York State publicly commits to cutting child poverty in half over 11 years with attention to racial equity. It requires a plan to reach this goal and regular assessment of progress toward the goal. While the promise is highly achievable, there is immense work to be done to combat our stubbornly high rates of child poverty. The Act creates a Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council that has examined policies likely to have an impact on poverty and racial inequity in New York. The council is chaired by the Office of the Governor and the Commissioner of the Office of Temporary and Disability Assistance. And Tax and Finance is on it, as well as several other state agencies. By statute, the council also includes individuals with lived experience and advocates. I serve on the council as an appointee of the Leader of the Senate. The Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council released a progress report this month, and New York has contracted, as Allison Lake mentioned, with the Urban Institute to model the potential impacts of various policy solutions. There's a wealth of data, information, expertise from the CPRAC meetings, the Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council meetings, and it's all housed on the OTDA website, and I really encourage you to check it out by topic area. In December 2022, just a year ago, our controller, the New York State Controller, released a report examining poverty in the state and reminding us that the New York State Constitution requires the state to provide for the, quote, aid, care, and support of the needy. Yet New York, a state with vast wealth and resources, allows hundreds of thousands of children to endure the hardships of poverty in times of recession and in times of plenty. In 2022, approximately 736,000 children, nearly 20% of all of our children, experienced poverty, and hundreds of thousands more are in near poverty, defined as 200% of the federal poverty level. Children in Black and Hispanic families experience poverty at much higher rates due to structural, historic, and continued racism in many areas of our lives. Compared to the rest of the nation, New York children are more likely to live in poverty than children in 32 other states. I think we can all agree that every child deserves a fair opportunity to be educated and get off to the best possible start. The zip code where they grow up should not determine their chances of achieving success, but it can and often does. DiversityDataKids.org takes a rigorous, equity-focused research approach to understand the conditions children experience with a mission to improve child well-being and increase racial and ethnic equity. They find that within a city, neighborhoods influence children's health, education, and that low-income children who live in neighborhoods with attributes like quality schools, parks and playgrounds, clean air, access to healthy food, health care, and safe housing have lower stress than low-income children in neighborhoods without these types of attributes. For sure.
Thanks.
Communities and cities can take action, but cannot reduce child poverty alone. Our communities need wide-reaching and cross-sector solutions. In the short term, New York should strengthen tax credits. Increased income for families has shown to be an effective poverty-fighting tool, and the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine found that it would be the #1 way to reduce child poverty. Further, we should strengthen our child tax credit this year. Further, stabilizing housing and reducing costs was identified by the National Academies of Sciences, Engineering, and Medicine as the #2 way to address child poverty. And then finally, reducing administrative barriers that prevent families from accessing or causing families to lose access to critical programs. Thanks for your time.
Thank you. And Mr. Nowosky.
Hi, thank you for holding this hearing today and for the opportunity to submit testimony about this critically important issue. My name is Pete Nabozny, and I am Director of Policy at the Children's Agenda in Rochester. The Children's Agenda is a children's policy and advocacy organization. Through analysis, advocacy, and collaboration with partners locally and statewide, we advocate for programs and policies that address the serious challenges facing children and families in our community and throughout New York State. We're entering our 20th year, so we're a bit behind the Schuyler Center, but we'll catch up someday. I'm also an appointee to the Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council, a body which is, as Kate said, charged with guiding New York to a 50% reduction in child poverty by 2031. The issues associated with concentrated poverty in cities across New York State are vast and complicated. They involve dynamics like job and housing discrimination, historic and ongoing resistance to education and housing integration, decades of economic stagnation in some places, and an inadequately constructed social safety net. I'm proud to live in Rochester with my family, but I'm not proud of Rochester's distinction as home to one of the highest child poverty rates among cities its size in the nation. According to the most recent census data, Rochester has a child poverty rate now of 42%. Almost 19,000 of the 45,000 children who reside in the city of Rochester are forced to experience the trauma of childhood poverty each year. And yet, most other parts of Monroe County have extremely low rates of child poverty. The county outside the city is broadly affluent, while child poverty in Monroe County is highly concentrated in the city's boundaries. The Census Bureau estimates that only 9% of Monroe County children outside the city of Rochester in poverty, a rate almost 4.5 times lower than that found in the city. This dynamic is not unique in Rochester. In Onondaga County, the child poverty rate in Syracuse is now 45%, while the rate in the rest of the county is 10%. In Erie County, the child poverty rate in Buffalo is 39%. In Lackawanna, it is 34%. In the rest of the county, it's 8%. Near here in Schenectady, the child poverty rate is 31%. In the rest of the county, it's 5%. To be clear, child poverty is bad for children wherever they live. Children who experience material deprivation, economic insecurity are at great risk for many negative experiences throughout their childhood and after they reach adulthood. But growing up poor is particularly bad in neighborhoods and communities with high rates of poverty, as Kate said. In short, growing up poor anywhere makes it difficult for a child to reach their full potential. But growing up poor in an impoverished community just further stacks the deck against that child and their family. Several months ago, I authored a report that explored one concrete way concentrated poverty hurts children and families. The report examined housing and school instability of children in the Rochester City School District. It pulled together data from a number of different sources, but was primarily based on analysis of school placement and home addresses for children across the past 2 school years. From 21-22 to 22-23, the course of those 2 years, 33% of all students, grades K through 11 in the Rochester City School District, either changed addresses within the school district or left the school district entirely. Elementary-age children in Rochester were more likely to experience housing instability than their older peers, and rates of housing movement among Black and Hispanic children were nearly twice that of white and Asian children in the city. Children and families move for many reasons, some good and some bad. But an extensive body of research suggests that in the aggregate, there is a negative association between housing instability and childhood well-being. Children who experience housing instability are more likely to repeat a grade, face mental health challenges, and drop out of school. Children with high rates of housing mobility during their early years are significantly more likely to exhibit behavioral problems throughout their entire school years. Data on evictions and student homelessness, along with reports from community members throughout Rochester, suggests that while people do move for many reasons, many families in Rochester are moving because of unsafe housing conditions, threatened or actual evictions, and a host of other negative reasons. Children experiencing homelessness, eviction, and unstable housing need additional support in school, but because of the intense socioeconomic and racial segregation that exists in Rochester and Monroe County, most children struggling from housing instability in the Rochester region attend the Rochester City School District. During the 2018-19 school year, about 25% of children attending public school in Rochester in Monroe County went to RCSD, but 75% of the children experiencing homelessness in that year were Rochester City School District students. This heavy concentration of children experiencing housing instability in one school district makes it more difficult, among many other reasons, for schools in that district to succeed in their mission of teaching children to read and write, learn math, and become broadly educated members of the community. That difficulty reinforces certain decisions that many families with more financial resources make about where to live in the greater Rochester region. This in turn perpetuates the concentration of poverty that we see in Rochester and similar communities across much of New York State. I second Kate's recommendations. I'd love to dive in more and really thank everyone for attending this hearing today. Thank you.
Thank you both, and thanks for really raising the issues of concentrated poverty, because I mean, we know there's kind of a threshold in schools where if you get above a certain poverty rate, everybody suffers because so many of the kids are unable to concentrate or are bringing a lot of baggage with them, you know, that nobody can alleviate. So, again, this comes back to some of the fair housing issues that we've talked about and a lot of the other concerns, but I wanted to push you a little bit about one of the things that I run up against as an elected official, trying to reach my constituents, kind of let them know what services there are out there. People who move all the time, it's really hard to track them down. It's hard to communicate with them about basic services, let alone about things like voting or, you know, making their voices heard at the level of, you know, having an influence on the governments and who's looking out for their interests. So are there examples where people, you know, have found ways to lift up the actual power of folks who are living in this kind of concentrated poverty where where, you know, their elected officials are more responsive to them because they're able to reach them, are able to hear from them more?
Yeah, I think it's a great question and a really significant challenge. I mean, families that are concerned about paying the rent that day or that month, or getting their kids to school, or having food on the table, those needs come first for that family, and it's hard for them to come to Albany for a hearing like the one that we're having today and discussing their challenges. I do think that there are lots of ways that elected officials are trying to engage, and I think, you know, community events and all the kinds of things that you all hold all the time are ways to engage some number of people in the community, but it's a real challenge. You don't hear from the people who maybe you need to hear from the most on some of these issues because they often lack the means and the social connections to have their voice heard. I do think that the structure of our entire social safety net perpetuates this. I think the TANF application in New York State is something like 29 pages right now. A lot of families I've heard through friends who are working, you know, closely, and I work myself in child care advocacy, that, you know, 40 to 50% of families that start the child care assistance application never finish it. They don't get through the process. Now, that's a family that's identified a need for child care, right? They've seen some need in their family to have child care, and they've started some process and they have a hard time getting through it. And then you multiply this by all the different systems that families have to navigate, and that's a lot of the work that people who are really struggling with poverty do every day, is complying with certain requirements and trying to fight their way through the system in order to just, you know, keep their head afloat. And that makes it very difficult for you know, for people to move on to those next things, like getting involved in their school board election, or running for office themselves, or volunteering with a campaign or some event in the community. It's a real challenge, and I think our system is sort of set up in a way that keeps people on that treadmill.
Could I just mention too, together with Pete's organization and others, we've been working to do more to hear from the people who are living, you know, these experiences. And your question is resonant with some of those comments that we're hearing, which is, I didn't know how to access, I didn't know that this existed, I didn't know how to access that, those kinds of things. And I'll say, the community schools is a promising model. I know we only have a few, but I think that's one thing. This has come up in sort of almost all the work I've done in any field, health, you know. And so there are pilots out there looking at how do we do better at connecting families to what they need in the health space. They're calling it peer family navigators, people who have lived experience and who, you know, become employed in order to help others navigate systems. I mean, Pete mentioned the point that our systems are too complicated first, and too bifurcate, you know, they're not connected to each other. Child welfare isn't connected to health, isn't connected, you know, they're not.
Right.
So we can do better with our systems, and we can do better at helping families navigate our systems.
Great, thank you. Anyone else?
I just had one quick question. As it relates to the Child Poverty Reduction Advisory Council, I mean, is it safe to say that that could be the Concentrated Poverty Advisory Council as well? That many of the statistics and the information you're going to gather from that is not, it's families as well as children in a general sense, because, I mean, and maybe not, but I guess just to follow up, and I'll take your comments, is that, you know, there are a lot of studies, a lot of things coming from different places, right, to various levels of government and organizations, and how we're going to fund things and what are the best outcomes and best practices. Do you see this report when it is with the, you know, the stats from the Urban Institute really going to be that kind of blueprint that we can stick to? That will be something that, you know, a lot of people don't want to get into that space because it's too complicated as far as funding goes and the priorities?
I think, you know, if we really want to reduce child poverty, we'll need to, and we'll need to measure over time. So we'll get some modeling about programs for which there's already evidence. You know, we have evidence about what works, and what the Urban Institute is going to do is kind of really dig in on the details. You know, if we increased the child tax credit by X amount for, you know, and then things like housing, if we put X dollars into different housing, how will we actually move the needle? And then the state should be measuring that over time, by geography, by race and ethnicity, by age.
Yeah, I'll just add that child poverty and poverty generally aren't fully synonymous, right? There's lots of adults that are they don't have children who are struggling from economic insecurity. Their income is very low. It's below the poverty threshold as we measure it. But children are the group in society that's most likely, age group that's most likely to be in poverty. And if anything, that data point sort of undersells it, because a lot of adults are the parents who are in poverty themselves, are the parents of children in poverty. And so when you're looking at the number of kids in New York State, around 800,000, I think, or so, that are, as Kate had the exact number, that are in poverty, and then you add on another couple 100,000 parents to that, that's about 40-something%, I think, of the total people in poverty in New York State. And so there are lots of other groups, and we should address poverty for everyone. But children make up an outsized share of the people in poverty in New York State, and their lifelong trajectory is most impacted by that experience in poverty, particularly in their early years. And so hopefully a blueprint for child poverty helps us set a course on fighting poverty at all age groups, and then it also has that impact of focusing on concentrated poverty, because as we've spoken about and as others have commented, poverty is most intensely felt in communities with high rates of poverty, and that in New York State is largely urban areas, particularly, and it's particularly high in upstate cities.
Thank you.
No, thank
both.
you. Yeah, thank you both. Senator Brooke has to leave by 2, so if we can take panel 6 before panel 5, we'd appreciate that, your willingness to do that. So let's go with Wanda Ridgway, Dr. Roosevelt Marius, and Reverend Myra Brown. We called Wanda Ridgway, Roosevelt Marius, and Myra Brown. And just for the record, we want to let everyone know that the Attorney General's office has just released its report on racial disparities in home ownership, how lending practices have prevented New Yorkers of color from purchasing homes and deepened wealth inequality. So something that we will also be considering as we move forward. So, let's start with Ms. Ridgway.
Hi, and good afternoon. Thank you for this opportunity to be here today. Our first time, and I'm really excited. So my name is Wanda Ridgway, and I'm the Executive Director of Rise Up Rochester. It's a not-for-profit in a city that empowers our community to establish and maintain a nonviolent culture. Some of the work that we do, we provide support to crime victims and their families. We provide wraparound service, safe housing, relocation, food, clothing, whatever their needs are, but most of all, being advocates for them. As we sat here today.
Can you speak up a little
I'm
bit,
sorry,
please?
my voice is, my asthma acting up, I'm sorry,
okay.
and that's why I have my, my partner down here to step in when but some of the work that we provide is serving as advocates for those families, being there when they lose loved ones, providing support groups and all type of things. One of the things we realize that when we're working with these families feel alone. They don't have any place to go. Hurt people hurt people. I'm a product of Rise Up Rochester after losing my nephew to violence in the city. It is important that we pour into the organizations that's really out here doing this work. Since we started the work in 2000, Rise Up Rochester has been around since 2008. In 2021, we started the wraparound services, providing assistance for those families, placing them in safe housing, which is, housing is a big concern, mental illness is a big concern, but just helping those families. I'm gonna let Kivo finish up. He's our SERVE coordinator, and please excuse me, like I said, my asthma is bothering me this morning.
Been there.
Okay.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon. Thank you. Thanks for having us here. I'm Kiva Owens. I'm the SERVE coordinator at Rise Up Rochester and serve as community engagement to reduce victimization. And I'm a hospital-based, so what I do is I receive referrals from and work in collaboration with the social workers at mainly UR-Med, but then also violence interruption groups in the community. They send me referrals from victims of violence, from blunt force trauma, shots, stab, beat downs, whatever have you. And my goal from there is to help stabilize that person from the time that they're discharged from the hospital. There we go.
There we go.
Yeah, so from the time that they're discharged from the hospital, my goal is to help stabilize that person. Now, everyone is different. Everyone's situation is different. What that stabilization looks like for them can depend on the circumstances of the crime or them being attacked. They may need to leave the city. So we work with other organizations like 585 SNUG to try to get them relocated out of town. And then we also give support with food, clothing, shelter, whatever it is in the wraparound services that we can do to help stabilize that person, because sometimes our hospitals treat them and street them. And we know that creates and continues the vicious cycle of victimization, re-victimization, but also retaliation in our neighborhoods and urban cities. We also work with other community organizations to help get gainful employment. So what that looks like is we work with groups like Urban League and try to get them into some type of trade or something like that, get a job from there, just whatever it is to help continue to move them forward in our life. Our goal is, in their life, our goal is to not just have an encounter with them and then be done with them after giving them, say, a night or two in the hotel. Our goal is to help them move forward in their lives and be progressive. We also work with the family as a whole. A lot of times if it's a young person and they have other siblings, they may be in the school system, there may be problems at the school systems. We recently went into RCSD to help parents advocate to get safety transfers because in a small community of Rochester, New York, when you see someone once, you'll see them again 2 weeks later, and that continues the cycle. We sat in on some groups at Douglas. I always call it Douglas. It's something new now, though, the new name of it. But just to help with conflict resolution with these groups. But I really wanted to just speak from the heart. Senator heard me last week doing this, just what I normally do. I heard a lot about child tax credit, and wow, I definitely agree that it's helped a lot. And I know we're here to talk about certain monies and poverties and how those things affect. I'm a firm believer that, I know we all heard, if you give someone a fish, you feed them for a day. You teach them to fish, you feed them for a lifetime. I'm a firm believer in that. Being one of 5 and coming up from poverty, graduating from city schools, I know that skills that I've learned have gotten me to this point in life, but it didn't happen alone. That's why we continue to work collaboratively with other organizations to help support and wrap around victims of violence and other victims and other people in our community, other young people in our community, to whatever we can help them do, because poverty is not just systemic, it's also generational. A lot of times when someone's parents are in poverty and are literate, then a lot of times that apple doesn't fall far from the tree. So
I'm going to ask you to
okay.
wrap up if you can.
Okay, yes, I definitely can wrap up. But I just also wanted to say that we do are recently just getting into schools, and we do also support the community school model. But that bridge navigator that I just heard Kate and Pete speak about is essentially what we've been piloting doing right now in the city of Rochester.
Great, thank you. Can we go next, Dr. Marias?
Good afternoon. Can you all hear me? My name is Roosevelt Mary Hughes. I'm the Dean Executive Director of REOC, the Rochester Educational Opportunity Center. Before I begin, I would like to thank Senator Brooke for inviting me. I appreciate your leadership. At REOC, our mission is to deliver academic and workforce development programs and provide support services leading to enhanced employment opportunities, access to further education, personal growth, and development. All the programs that we offer at REOC are tuition free. Every year we enroll about 1,300 students, and many of our students come from 3 of the New York State 5 poorest zip code, 14621, 14605, 14611, which are in the city of Rochester. For many of our community members, our EOC is the only option they have to improve their lives to a higher level of sufficiency. For over 50 years, our EOC has been transforming lives and have placed countless people on the path to upward mobility, which has created lasting change for the betterment of our city and beyond. For example, in 2022-23, many of our students who came to our EOC were making about $23,000 a year. After they leave us, they were making at least $36,000. Many of our students became doctors, business owners, teachers, nursing, entrepreneurs, just a few. Jerome Underwood, President and CEO for Action for a Better Community, pointed out that we must all change the narrative around poverty, transition from the individual who find themselves in a situation they do not want. We should address the systems, policies, and practices that allow economic deprivation to continue unabated for so long. I would like to share a personal story. If it was not for our EOC and SUNY Brockport, I might end up being a statistics and an underachiever. 23 years ago, when I began my career at our EOC as a security guard, I was satisfied and accepted this position as being my peak role in life, even though I was living below the poverty line. Like many of our students, I set the bar very low. I was placed in a box because of my environment I was in and the lack of resources and role models in my neighborhood. My zip codes were 14621 and 14613. After a few months of working at our EOC and witnessing so many successful people of color in senior leadership positions, a mental shift occurred. I wanted to emulate them, and thus promised myself I was going to aspire for more. Needless to say, our EOC helped me to raise the bar. I soon enrolled at SUNY Brockport, and they began my transformation. When I started working at our EOC in 1999, I had to work about 60 hours a week just to get by. The agency who had the contract with our EOC to provide security paid us the minimum while keeping the majority of the money our EOC was giving them. After a year of working at our EOC and proving to the leaders that I was a worthy employee, I went to them to discuss the system that was in place, which was perpetuating poverty at our EOC unintentionally. After a few minutes with leadership, I was able to convince them to change the system and explore hiring internal security guard to civil service, where after we made that happen, I had benefits and I was making a decent living. As a result of our EOC increasing my income, my health and economic status improved a lot. Our map stated poverty is a system problem that requires system solution. In closing, there is a lot of data and reports which speak to the cause and effects of poverty, and many are hopefully familiar with the various disparities that exist along racial and ethnic lines. We encourage the legislator to have public policies that will level the playing field and eliminate areas of deprivation, which will assist underserved population who live there to move toward social, emotional, and economic self-sufficiency. Thank you.
Thank you. And Reverend Brown.
Hi, my name is Reverend Myra Brown. I'm the pastor of Spiritus Christi Church. I'm also the president and CEO of the Black Community Focus Fund. We're a non-for-profit that is committed to getting to zero on disparities for Black families by supporting them in housing, education, employment, and entrepreneurship. I'm also the granddaughter of a sharecropper and the daughter of a migrant farm worker who came up from the South to work on a migrant farm in Albion, New York. So my life has been surrounded by the experience of poverty. And it's interesting to me to be sitting on this panel because one of the ways that I came out of poverty was by attending SUNY Brockport, our EOC program, and became an LPN. So I really, really appreciate the work that you're doing there. In my dual role with these two nonprofit organizations, one a church and one a community service organization, I've had the opportunity to witness poverty firsthand and its assault on the citizens of Rochester. The cause of poverty is many, but for Black citizens in Rochester, poverty has been connected to systemic racist policies that created poverty, that exacerbated it, and created it in the first place through racist housing, economic, education, and employment policies that have had long-standing effects in Rochester. But this experience of poverty has gone beyond as cross race and gender and ethnicity. In my role as pastor and president and CEO of the Black Community Focus Fund, I encounter it every day. The church becomes the catch-all when all human service organizations struggle. Single working class mothers and fathers walk through my doors looking for help to buy milk for their babies, groceries for hungry children, cash to put gas in their car. A father recently came to me because he parked in the wrong place and he got his car impounded, but he had to pick his children up and he had to get to work. And so I had to take him to the impound to pay for his car to get out so that he could then pick up his children and get to work to provide for them because their mother had left them. She was addicted to drugs and he was the only person that could take care of them. And so poverty had surrounded their lives. We often have Homemaker mothers with disabilities seek us out as well. Working class moms who are trying to keep food on their tables. And so we put together a program to give out grocery food cards so that people would have food on their tables to eat when we get them donated. We've had homeless men and women seek us out who've been sanctioned by DHS and are forced to sleep on the sidewalk or on street grates in front of our church that pushes up hot steam, and they sleep on that hot steam just to stay warm during the winter. I've been to more motels and hotels than I care to talk about to get poor people off the street for some safety because they don't have resources or a safety net. Not to mention the advocacy that we provide to interrupt exploitation of the poor once we do find them a place to go. This year, I've had the privilege to do something about poverty by helping to design the GBI Guaranteed Basic Income Pilot Program with the City of Rochester as a result of being chosen in a piece of legislation by the previous mayoral administration to currently administer that program through the Black Community Focus Fund. I believe that funding programs like this is a policy that the legislature can implement to reduce poverty. The GBI program will end November 2024 because it is a pilot, but the needs of this direct cash transfer program will continue. When we roll this program out and open applications as a pilot program to address poverty and offer supplemental economic floor for those living in and at and below poverty, we had 17,000 people apply for that program, which I think really speaks to the great need in Rochester, New York. That was only a fraction. We had many more who inquired about the program much later after the application window closed. The GBI program has been an eye-opener for us to additional levels of poverty for parents and children that are being cared for in our city. This program is addressing 3 of the poorest zip codes in our city, 14605, 14621, 14611. Many of the folks from those zip code areas were selected for this program, and others that are in other zip code areas. But 376 people really is not enough. I have enrolled individuals who are existing on $4,000 to $6,000 a year, sleeping on people's couches, individuals who are living off of Social Security with $900 to $1,000 a month with rents $600 to $900. None of us could live on the rest of that kind of money. Just the gas and the food and the telephone alone would cancel out what remains. We ask each selected applicants what their financial goal is for these extra $500 a month that they receive. And I enrolled a mother whose story just stays with me. She told me that this extra $500 will allow her to finally open her RG&E bill, which she hadn't opened in years. She said, I have no money to pay it, so I don't even look at it. She just waits until it's shut off, and then she seeks help with HEAP to turn it back on. And then she told me that she was exhausted by her poverty, and she was tired of her daughter's tears. She said, my hope for the $500 would be to help interrupt the cycle of off. And I said, what do you mean by that? She said, to have my daughter stop asking me, Mommy, why are our lights always off? Why is our TV always off? Why is our refrigerator always off? Why don't we ever have enough food to eat? And she said, I just look forward to getting out of the cycle of off. And so I think that Rochester needs funding of a permanent GBI program. The City of Rochester has invested $2.2 million for 375 people and received an additional $6,000 so we can add another person. So we're at 376, which we have just completed enrolling those 376 on December 1st. And so those payments have begun. But these kinds of programs will break the cycle and give individuals and families a fresh start. The programs we have in place currently have some limited resources, but I think we can do better. I think GBI programs across our nation have had some really good results. And so it's one way that we've been able to see people invest in their education dreams, start new businesses, get better jobs, maintain reliable transportation, reduce their stress, depression, stabilize housing, and ultimately stabilize their families and reclaim hope for their future. And so I think I would come here today to say that is one way that the legislature. The other is an idea that I also think that we have a problem with poverty and homelessness. But what if we also funded homes where we put people in for a year without any rent, without any RG&E so they could stabilize their lives for a year. That too would eradicate these experiences of poverty. So I want to just thank you. I know my time is up, and I'm open to other questions because I've always got ideas for ending poverty. But thank you so much for allowing me to speak here today.
Thank you. Thank you for the telling real stories about real people's lives and just what we're talking about here, because this is very powerful. I just wanted to clarify, so you said it was $2.2 million, you got 17,000 applicants, you were able to fund 376 in the end. So clearly nowhere close to what was needed.
That's correct.
Yeah, okay. And we can all do the math of what would get us there, but it's pretty daunting. I wanted to go back to something you said early on about the person whose car was impounded, because I'm really interested in the role of fines and fees and the inequitable policing of things like parking and stuff that leads people who are already in poverty to be more likely to end up with fines and fees that they can't pay, and then the penalties on top of that, and that just, perpetuates the cycle. And I'm curious if you're aware of any programs or any efforts. I know in Syracuse there is at least an effort to figure out what parts of the city or where, the bulk of the fines and fees are coming from, and are there ways to intervene there? But I didn't know if that was something that anyone has thought about.
No, I'm not aware of any program like that or thinking around those issues like that in Rochester. I mean, we still have alternate parking, which is still encapsulating people in cycles of poverty and having to pay fees and moving cars. I'm not even sure that the spirit of those laws are still relevant, but certainly the fees and the opportunities for people to pay are still there.
Yeah.
For us in Rochester, it's a major challenge. Many of our students who come to our EOC are underserved, so they cannot afford to pay parking ticket. So they come here to our EOC to go to school. When they come out, there's a boot in their car. So it's problematic.
Yeah.
We have a young 18-year-old man that we're working with that was in trouble with the law, but he's trying to get his life together. He wants to get his license, but he has 2 tickets that we're going to try to find some money to pay his tickets. But again, the problem definitely continues because without license and transportation, Rochester is a city where you have to drive to work most times because the better jobs are on the outside of the city.
Yeah. I mean, it's a local issue in terms of who sets those fines, but I think at the state level we need to take a 10,000-foot view of it and see if there are ways to intervene, because it really is inequitably applied, I think. And a $20 ticket to me and a $20 ticket to somebody who's living, really paycheck to paycheck, that's a whole different matter. Yeah. So. Okay, thank you. Anyone else have questions?
Yeah.
Go ahead.
Great. Thank you all so much for coming, making me very proud to be your representative in the Senate. And I just wanted to start with, of course it was unplanned. I didn't know what you all were going to share, but I think it's very interesting and very telling that for those who aren't familiar with Rochester, this is the story of Rochester, everything you just heard. And there's a few things I want to pull out for us because I think that they are examples of how the state can do better with policy. So, we heard from previous panels about the fact that not only living in poverty, but in living in concentrated poverty is kind of this double whammy. And so I think of your story, Roosevelt, right? That what you expected for yourself, what you saw for yourself was changed because of exposure to those in other positions, because of the knowledge of what this company was doing and how they were making way more money than the people working for them. And that completely changed your trajectory. And then, of course, the availability and accessibility of an education by working there, right? And we've heard about from Rise Up Rochester where this intersection is of high levels of concentrated poverty and high levels of violence. And I said the same thing in our report on AIM funding last year, that when you look at the city of Rochester compared to any other city in New York State, our levels of violence are higher, our funding is lower. And it doesn't take a genius to look at that data and say there's something wrong here when it comes to our resources. And of course, we're hearing stories from Rev Myra about what it means just for a few extra $100. And we say extra, right? It's not extra because you're not meeting your own needs. And so, you know, I think that tells the story in so many ways of what we can and should be considering. So I have a question, and I'm happy to have, you know, one or two of you answer it. But, you know, I think of your story, Roosevelt, and your success, right? I think most people would say you are in a fabulous position. You are able to help so many people get educations throughout the city of Rochester and Monroe County. I am curious, though, if you could rewrite your story again, where would you see that an intervention or a support could have happened sooner?
That's a great question. Probably when I was in high school in Brooklyn, you know, I used to be a smart kid. Then I started hanging out with the wrong people, and then my grades started to drop. Because I could have went to any school I wanted to if I had stayed on track. So then I ended up going to a community college. I dropped out of college 3 times. It was not till I came to Rochester and then started seeing some great role models that I said, okay, I gotta do better. When you know better, you do better. So if I had the people that I met in Rochester in my life when I was in high school, they would have saved me a lot of headache.
Thank you. And if anyone else wants to share from the stories you've heard, the families you've worked with, kind of what those intervention points, especially as we think about policy, that could have changed their lives in addition to what we've already covered.
I can piggyback on that. As I mentioned, the loss of my nephew. If I never would have went to church and saw that they had this support group, like I said, I'm a product of Rise Up Rochester. And that support group gave me the tools to be able to move forward. But as I sat there, I said we could be doing so much more in our community, and what we can, you know, what should we be doing? But we started off, like I said, as volunteers. Now we're funded, thanks to Senator Sam Mabrouk and others to help us to fulfill those needs of those families. So I just thank God for that intervention at an early age at church.
I think for me, I think the intervention came just in time. It came when I was 18 years old, and my community intervened for me. You know, the people who owned the store, when I couldn't find a babysitter, said, bring the baby to me, we'll put him behind the counter, and we'll watch him for you while you go to school to become a nurse, and they did. You know, the pastor from a local church who decided to open up a walk-in center decided to come and hire me in the meantime so I could make a little extra money to take care of my little baby. You know, the teachers at ELC encouraged me, you know, and let me know that I could do, you know, this new thing of being a nurse and help people. And it was the caveat into a career that helped me to come out of poverty and be able to take care of my children, to buy my first house, to buy a car, to have transportation, to stabilize our lives. But many families today don't have those social supports. They don't have those things in place in the community. And so we have to fill that gap for people and make sure that they have what they need so that they can successfully navigate through and out of poverty.
Thank you all so much. That's my time. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Thank you all for your testimony. Of course. And now we'll bring up panel 5, and thank you so much for waiting. This will be Taina Wodniak from the New York Immigration Coalition, Jamila Mishner, and Jacqueline Orr. Thanks for bringing these great people.
Oh, yeah, anytime. Yeah, that's a great.
So, thank thank you all, as I said, for waiting. Let's have Taina. Is that you? Okay, hi.
Bon après-midi, tout le monde. My name is, it means good afternoon all in Haitian Creole. My name is Taina Wagnac. I am the Senior Manager of State and Local Policy at New York Immigration Coalition. And we are an umbrella policy and advocacy that works statewide with over 200 immigrant servant member organizations. Thank you to the senators for convening this hearing and allowing us the opportunity to testify today. The need for poverty relief measures in New York is great. A Raising New York analysis found that despite consistently ranking in the top 5 states in the nation for its per capita income and GDP, New York has ranked in the bottom third of the entire country for its high rate of child poverty. And despite contributing $23.5 billion in taxes to New York state and local economy, nearly 18% of New York's immigrant family with children are living in poverty. Last year, we were extremely pleased that the state Senate that the New York State expanded the Empire State Child Credit to children under 4 years old who had previously been cruelly excluded. This was the first step in the right direction. But if New York State is serious about cutting child poverty by half in 10 years, as it has committed to doing so under the Child Poverty Reduction Act, then it must substantially more must be done to close the gap for New York's children. The Working Families Tax Credit, Senate Bill 277A and Assembly Bill 4222A, sponsored by Senator Grunardis and Assemblymember Hevesy, would give New York's families what they need to keep going. The bill would include tax-filling families regardless of citizen status and eliminate the harmful phase-in that gives the least to the most in-need families instead providing those with the lowest income the largest credit. The bill would also increase the credit provided to all families to a maximum credit of $1,500 per child, provide a minimum of $500 credit per child regardless of income, and eliminate the cap on the number of children eligible to receive a credit. We need not guess at the success of the tax credit system to relieve poverty. When child tax credit programs are in place, New York parents use the tax cuts to pay for childcare, food, clothing, and other basic needs. This is crucial given that the gap in childcare options specifically is one of the single biggest obstacles when participating in the economy. Passing the Working Family Tax Credit would result in a 13.4% reduction in children under the age of 18 living in poverty, with a 19.6% reduction for those under 18 living in deep poverty. Studies from the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities and the Urban Institute and Humanity Forward also show that direct cash benefits like the federal child tax credit help moms, especially single mothers, get back to work by alleviating the cost of childcare and transportation. New York has an opportunity to raise the floor for all of our struggling families by passing the Working Family Tax Credit, and that is all. Thank you, everybody.
Nicely done, thank you. Next, I have Jamila.
Yeah.
Is that you? Okay.
Yeah. All right. Well, Chairwoman May, members of the Senate Standing Committee, everyone here today, everybody who might be watching, I'm just grateful for this opportunity to spend some time thinking about the causes and consequences of poverty. I am going to say a bit about who I am, but also warn you that I'm going to pan out a little and think about poverty through a sort of larger lens. So my name is Jamila Michener. I'm an associate professor of government and public policy at Cornell. And so my research is focused on poverty, racial inequality, and public policy with a lot of emphasis on health. I do a lot of work on Medicaid and also on housing. I do work on tenants and housing and tenant power. My work focuses not only on policy and how policy can intervene in people's lives to improve their lives, but also on the power and agency of those same people. And so I consider not only the material consequences of policy interventions of the sort that you all are well positioned to make, but also the political and civic consequences of those interventions and what they mean for how and whether people can exercise influence over their lives and the communities that profoundly affect them. My comments today are going to highlight the structural and systemic roots of poverty. This has come up a lot in our conversations thus far. But I'm going to delve a little bit deeper and really just take a few minutes to debunk some common misunderstandings about poverty. When I started college more than 20 years ago now, I hate to admit, the first course I signed up for was a course on poverty. And when I started teaching at Cornell over 10 years ago, the first course I taught was a course on poverty. So this is a long-standing, some might say obsession, I prefer preoccupation, that's been driven by a basic question, which is why? In a country and in a state with access to immense resources, why do people live in poverty? This is especially critical as a question because the United States is a pretty striking outlier. The markers of poverty and other forms of inequality in our country don't look the same way in other countries that we consider our peer democracies. One thing I've realized as I've taught about and I've studied poverty is that misunderstandings of its causes are actually the rule rather than the exception. And that's why I'm going to spend a few minutes just focused on three core facts here today. I think that they're an important basis for the future, the present and the future discussion, deliberation, and decision-making ultimately that you all will do. So first, a lot of people think of poverty as a phenomenon that is experienced by others, yet a significant majority of Americans will experience poverty during their life course. So if we think in life course terms over the course of our lives, about 59% of Americans will spend at least 1 year below the official poverty line. These are Americans between the ages of 20 and 75. So we've been talking a lot about children, and rightly so, but even if we exclude children who are a very high poverty population relatively from the population, or from the equation, still roughly 59% of Americans will spend at least 1 year below the official poverty line, and that's only the official poverty line. If we think about folks who will live near poverty line, right, just hovering just above that line, that number goes up to 76%. So longitudinally tracking poverty this way, and these numbers track to New York, where similarly majorities of New Yorkers will move into and out of poverty throughout their life course. And I want to just speak to the larger implications of this, because if poverty is something that will affect most people or many people at some point in their lives, then it stands to reason that individuals aren't the cause of poverty. It's not as if 76% or upwards of 50% are making bad choices or just not working hard enough or what have you, right? Instead, poverty is a systemic problem. Things that we've been talking about for hours here now: housing, healthcare, the labor market hasn't come up much, but matters a lot. Criminal, legal, and civil legal systems. These are the systems that play a role in producing and exacerbating poverty. And they're the same systems that play a role in distributing it differentially across geographic space, which is what we came here to talk about today, and also across racial and ethnic groups and across demographic groups like children, families, etc. Second, and I'll move quickly here, many people assume poverty is a big city problem. We obviously don't, which is why this hearing is being held. But it's worth pointing to some of the realities of the empirical record. There are more people living in poverty in medium to small size cities, suburbs, and rural areas than there are people living in the sort of typical inner city poverty that we might imagine when we think about places like Chicago, Philadelphia, or New York. Why? This is particularly true and increasingly true as the ever-rising costs of housing, which has rightly come up quite a bit today, spread across all sorts of geographies. Significant growths in rents, for example, have been occurring in both large and small to mid-sized cities. So, for example, households with incomes less than $34,999, rental costs, for households in that income bracket, rental cost burden rates are above 80%. And this is true across all city size categories, right? So not just New York City, but also Syracuse, and so on and so forth. Finally, people often assume that poverty is readily avoided by playing by the rules. Per this formulation, following the right sequence of successful choices is the surest way to avoid poverty. You get married before having children, you go to school, you work hard, and so on and so forth. The implicit and sometimes explicit supposition underlying this narrative is that poverty is a function of individual behavior, and that we can fix poverty by fixing, quote unquote, the poor. But the empirical evidence doesn't support this story. even among working families that do all the quote-unquote right things, graduating from high school, having children when you're not young and in the context of marriage, so on and so forth, there's still a 7.4% poverty rate. And careful empirical research reveals that most of the population of people living in poverty are similar to the US population in terms of outcomes like employment, age, family structure, and education. So people are not experiencing poverty primarily because of the bad choices they're making, and this is why a safety net is so critical, and it's why state intervention, policy intervention is so critical. So I could go on at length, but I won't, because there aren't enough hours in the day, and we don't have enough time in this hearing. So I'm going to close out by turning to one final fact about poverty, something we surely all know, and this core reality is demonstrated by a growing consensus of scholars, and that's that poverty is a political choice. And by this I mean that poverty is largely a function of policy decisions about what? The generosity of public programs, the strength and accessibility of the safety net. I would really highlight programs like Medicaid there, which we haven't talked much about health here today, and certainly things like the child tax credit, programs related to housing, the affordability and availability of critical resources like housing, and then the degree of protection that people have from predation, harm, and exploitation. So we've talked a lot about resources, but I think it's also important to think about how we protect people. Workers in the workplace, renters living in homes rented by landlords. No matter how independent, hardworking, or industrious any person is, all New Yorkers are embedded in these sets of overlapping systems that indelibly structure their vulnerability to poverty, and no one can stand alone and unassisted in the face of sickness, unexpected tragedy, unavoidable job loss, a volatile and unforgiving economy, human frailty, onerous care responsibilities, and so much more. These are aspects of the human condition that require bold, comprehensive, and admittedly on your part, difficult action. Such action recognizes and respects the bonds of our common humanity while securing the longevity and strength of our democracy. I want to point out that all of this is really an important element of maintaining a robust and enduring democracy.
Thank you. And finally, Ms. Orr.
Yes, and I have my testimony here.
Oh, okay.
So I don't know if you wanted to get it. So I will be brief, since you will be able to read it. I do not need to read it for you.
Thank you.
So my name is Jackie Orr. I'm the CEO at the New York State Community Action Association, which we fondly call NYSCA. NYSCA is the membership association for the 47 community action agencies across the state. There are 45 that are private, not-for-profit, and 2 that are public. And I know, Senator May, that you know the 2 community action agencies in your district, Peace and Syracuse, that serves Syracuse as well as Onondaga County, and CAPS Cayuga Seneca, that serves both Seneca and Cayuga counties. And there is a community action agency serving every county in New York. They have a variety of programs. In particular, the 2 in Senator May's district have Head Start, Early Head Start, Energy and Housing Services, nutritional programs, including food pantries and senior meals, case management services, and a whole host of other organizations. In case you all weren't aware, Community Action originated from the War on Poverty, and it's a nationwide effort to combat poverty by offering direct assistance and fostering community partnerships. Its primary goal is to assist low-income and vulnerable families in achieving stability and acquiring resources to lift themselves out of poverty. Each community action agency, by statute, has to conduct what we call a community needs assessment every 3 years, and that's to determine the needs and the resources of the community so that they can prioritize their programs and services accordingly. To continue a little bit on the conversation before about involving those who live in poverty, also by statute, every community action agency has what we call a tripartite board, which means there's 3 sections or pieces to the board. One is that there are local elected officials or their representatives on the board. The other third is that there are just folks in the community. If you want an attorney, an accountant, your local philanthropist, and the other third are the low-income consumers or those who represent low-income consumers. So we've always had low-income voices on our Community Action Agency boards, and as you probably well know, that with Head Start has policy councils that also involve the parents of the children who are in Head Start. I'm not going to go through everything, like I said, that I mentioned. I mean, we support a lot of the policies that were mentioned today about improving the state child care tax credit, increasing SNAP benefits, school meals, the housing access voucher program. I do think it's noteworthy that the Rural Housing Coalition of New York just conducted a mayor's poll last month, and 73% of adults residing in New York expressed concerns about the cost of housing in their local communities. 83% of renters and 66% of homeowners viewed housing affordability as a substantial issue. And as you all know, housing costs for low-income families is an exorbitant amount of their monthly pay. But I did want to, in my 1 minute and 37 seconds, I did want to comment about thank you for including those resources in the hearing notice. In the case study, The Enduring Challenge of Concentrated Poverty in America, that report says a key demographic change that has influenced levels of neighborhood poverty has been the increase in single-parent families. From 1970 to 2000, the proportion of U.S. births occurring among unmarried mothers tripled from 11% to 33%. And then the report further states, in every one of the case study communities, the one of which was Rochester, single-parent families represent a greater share of households than in their wider metropolitan or rural areas. While multiple factors underlie this long-term demographic trend, the high proportion of single-earner households with children contributes to the concentration of poverty in these communities. And many of these single-parent households are led by women. So I wanted to just draw your attention to fatherhood. And many, Peace being one, many of our community action agencies have fatherhood programs. We know that research has shown that children raised in father-absent homes have a 4 times greater risk of poverty, or more likely to have behavioral problems, more likely to go to prison, 7 times more likely to become pregnant as a teen, et cetera, et cetera. Families and households that have a father present tend not to have, or a man present tend not to have these poor childhood outcomes. So in Ohio, we've been working a lot with the state of Ohio, and they've established a statewide commission to improve the outcomes of children and strengthen families by providing opportunities for fathers to become better parents, partners, and providers. I'm done.
Thank you. Well done. It's too much to talk about here, but I just want to come back to the idea that we've talked a lot about child poverty, but we also need to talk about the adults and immigrants. I know in Central New York we are very rich in immigrants from all over the world. A lot of refugees settle in Syracuse and Utica, especially, and experience often a lot of poverty when they're getting their feet, but also contribute enormously to our communities through entrepreneurship and volunteerism and just so much. So this idea that we need to, that the kinds of supports that we can provide as a society to people experiencing poverty also often pay back many, many times over. That is an important one to remember. And then just thank you, Professor Michener, for reminding us that poverty isn't the fault usually or isn't something we should point blame about to the individuals experiencing it, but rather to the context in which people are living, and that if it's 59%, that was a startling statistic to me. It means that our investments in combating poverty are actually investments in most of us, actually. So being able to bring that out is really important. I guess I guess we all know that there are big investments that need to be made in terms of the budget, but I would love it if you could talk about any policy changes that you would like to see that that might move the needle too.
Absolutely. Well, I'm a healthcare person, and this has not come up very much, so I guess I'll flag things that are related to healthcare. A lot of my work focuses on Medicaid. And one of the things I'd say about Medicaid, I know it can be controversial because it's big and it's expensive and it's a huge target on its back all the time. But from a research perspective, what Medicaid is contributing in the medium to long term, whether it's children who have Medicaid when they're young in the long run being more likely to graduate from high school, less likely to be incarcerated, more likely to be employed, whether it's families being less likely to be in poverty. I mean, Medicaid is the largest anti-poverty program that we have, and it's also a work support. We know that people are able to more effectively able to stay employed when they have health care, and it's a support for people who are in the most vulnerable moments in their lives, right? Often for reasons that none of us can control. And so I would say really investing in that program. I know that there are various things on the table. Continuous eligibility, for example, is something that lots of states are taking up, particularly for children. And it's something, again, that we have great evidence about. It contributes not only to people having access to healthcare as a critical resource, that again is poverty alleviating and preventative, but also having consistent and humane access, right? So eliminating unnecessary churn into and out of programs and eliminating administrative burden that comes with having to enroll and re-enroll and so on and so forth. So that's a big one that I would flag. I know that housing has come up a lot, and I guess I would flag housing as well, lots of the other things that folks have said, but on a larger level, I would flag thinking about any policy that not only provides people with resources, but also provides them with protections, right? So if we think about how vulnerable tenants often are in the face of landlords and how little power they have, what are the ways that that can be pushed back against? And I know that's a challenging space, right? I'm going for all the challenging ones, but also those are the pain points for reasons, because those are the places where people are really hurting in their lives and where I think you all can make the biggest impact.
Thanks. Well, I will also, you lift up in what you shared with us, the statewide right to counsel, which is my legislation to make sure that people facing eviction have legal representation, because we know that that can make a huge difference in the number of people who actually end up being evicted or are able to stay in their homes.
I do some research on that, so happy to send it to your folks.
Oh, great.
Yeah.
Okay, anyone else have a question?
I just have two quick questions. Thank you all for being here. So I have the distinct pleasure of representing Tompkins County and most certainly Cornell being a part of Tompkins, and one of the things
it's our pleasure, by the way.
One of the things that's come up in conversations is that in a place like Tompkins County where you have a prestigious institution like Cornell, you also have pervasive issues around affordable housing in terms of just the price of housing, affordable housing. And so one of the questions that I have for you, Dr. Michener, is in your research that you've done, and then you mentioned the new center that has just come online, which I definitely want to learn more about that. What have you found with regards to data around just kind of housing insight that you all have been possibly looking into at Cornell? So that's one question. And then my second question is for you, Ms. Orr, with respect to, you mentioned the Rural Housing Coalition of New York, and they conducted a mayor's poll, is that correct, last month? So I just wanted to get a little more information about that.
Yeah.
Do you want to start?
All
I'm
right,
happy
I can
to go,
start.
but,
In my information that I gave you, I have a link to it.
Oh, okay.
So you have it, but it's posted on their website. And they are the Rural Housing Coalition of New York State, but it wasn't just for folks who live in rural areas. It was for folks who live across the state. So they have the whole poll and the results on there that talk about, as I mentioned, 83% of renters and 60% of homeowners viewed housing affordability as a substantial issue. But those were, and then it was 81% of urban, 69% of, or 67% of rural, and 69% of suburban folks all saw it as a major problem. So it wasn't just if you lived in the cities that you saw it as a major problem versus living in another part of the state. But the report is online.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, those are great questions, and you know, I guess first on the housing front, I would say we've already heard so many statistics on housing today, and I think they're all accurate, and there's a lot of focus on access and affordability. I think that is absolutely right, particularly in areas where there are major institutions like universities that are driving up the cost of housing in ways that make it unsustainable for ordinary people who live in those communities to be able to afford to work there and or to live there. And so I think there are all sorts of issues like that that are at play. It's one of the reasons why tenant protections and work around tenant rights is so critical. But not only that, but why tenant voices, having them involved in our political processes, are so important. And so I'm thinking about Ithaca's tenant union and growing tenant unions across the country. I've done some work on that. And it really is pivotal, right, to have people's voices and their experiences at the sort of center of our understandings of how we can improve housing. So we have lots of data, and we could use better data on numbers and statistics, but I want to emphasize the importance of qualitative data and a real sense of people's experiences. I'll also say, particularly in rural areas and in upstate New York, one thing that we often don't focus on with respect to housing that's pivotal and quite critical in terms of how people experience housing and in terms of the relationship between health and housing is conditions, habitability, right? A lot of the housing stock in rural areas is not only limited, but old. And in upstate New York, more generally, even in upstate small to mid-sized cities, the housing stock is extraordinarily old. And so things that we think are not a big deal anymore, or that some of us may take for granted as being sort of beyond the pale, I'm sure you all don't, things like exposure to lead and asbestos, and also just exposure to conditions like mold and insect infestations. And I've been doing a big research project with some researchers at Syracuse University, but also we've incorporated people in our study from Tompkins County. And people talk to us more about conditions of habitability, even than they do about eviction. And I would say at about the same amount as they do affordability. It's not just that housing is expensive, but it's bad for their health. So I think as far as evidence and data infrastructure, we really need to build our data infrastructure around understanding conditions and start to think about policies that help us to make sure not only that people have some place to live that's affordable, but some place that respects their basic human dignity. And so those are areas of focus that I would certainly underscore. And that this new center that Cornell is building, the Center for Racial Justice and Equitable Futures, will certainly have to attend to, because so many of these issues are a function of long-standing processes of racial inequality and racism.
Yeah, and I'll just close. I know we're going to go to another wrapping. I definitely like to get more information, because we've had not only conversations as a legislature, but we've also passed policies just in this session around addressing issues around lead abatement, which is definitely a pervasive issue, not exclusively in my district, but across the state. And so environmental hazards definitely create a barrier. It's even when you are investing in building infrastructure, you have to address the environmental conditions. So thank you.
Yeah, let me just follow up on that one little bit, because I know you started your testimony saying that you were focusing on power and agency. So I asked this question in a previous panel, but I'd like to come to you with it too, because I think about, for example, the political disparity between homeowners and renters, for example. And part of it is I feel it as a candidate. I can knock on the door of a homeowner, but I can't get into an apartment building and talk to the people there, and that means they can't talk to me either. And then if they're moving around or they're getting evicted or, have all these other pressures on, they're even less likely to have that kind of access to political power, either at the side of being able to vote at all, or talk to their legislators, or run for office, or any of the other, or have us listen to them, because if they're not voting, it's harder for us to pay attention to them. So have you thought in those terms, like, are there policy interventions that you are aware of being done anywhere that actually raise the power of people living in poverty in the political arena?
Yeah, I love this question because it's what I do, it's what I study. I guess I'd say two things just quickly. One is that I know we briefly mentioned Right to Counsel, but some of the work that I've been doing around Right to Counsel is really looking at how not only does Right to Counsel provide people with material relief by allowing them to stay in their homes and prevent evictions and so on and so forth, but when we talk to people about what that experience means to them, we either survey them or we interview them, what we find is it also strengthens their civic and political capacity, right? That those experiences that people have that are positive experiences with the state, with the courts, translate into them being more willing and feeling more efficacious around engaging government and engaging government institutions. And the opposite is true too, that when people have alienating and demoralizing experiences in spaces like housing court, that leads them to draw conclusions about government and the extent to which they can and should be engaging it. So you're already working on one piece of that, and often people don't connect the dots between something like Right to Counsel and power, but those sorts of things are connected. Many of these policies work in the same way, right? I mean, a lot of my work focuses on Medicaid, but I wrote a book on how Medicaid actually affects people's political lives, and that when they have positive experiences with a Medicaid program that is generous and that has low administrative burdens, that they're more likely to vote, to participate civically and politically. So some of the policies that we've been talking about seem like they're separate from the power piece, but they're connected, and not in straightforward partisan ways. It's not that every Medicaid beneficiary then goes out and votes for Democrats or something like this, right? It's not about that, it's about democracy. And so a lot of this work around alleviating poverty through policy is actually work about democracy and power. And the last thing I'd say is just that I love your narration of that disconnect, and your awareness of the disconnect, frankly, is very heartening to me, that you're thinking about this and wanting to problem solve around it. And this is where I think working with organizations really matters. I've been doing a long-term study of tenant organizations, and organizations bring people together who otherwise might be hard to access and can help to channel their voice and their power and to connect them to legislators like yourself. And so I think to the extent that we can think about policies that can be, at the very least, not making life harder for those sorts of organizations, not making it more difficult for them to be built up, and perhaps providing them with support, I think is really important. It really is about civic infrastructure of our communities. How do we support civic infrastructure? And organizations like tenant organizations are a part of that. They're not the only part of it, but they're a part of it.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you all so much for your testimony.
Thank you.
And our final panel is panel 7. We have Jason Mays from the Hudson Valley Justice Center, Janet Fry from the Community Resource Center, and Karen Aaron from Feeding Westchester. Thank you all for hanging on to the bitter end here. Appreciate you being here.
Able to stay for the entire time.
Which one?
And that's the back one. I don't know if you want to recognize Karen.
Okay, so Karen Aaron from Feeding Westchester was not able to stay, but has given us written testimony. So it's just two of you. So Jason Mays, you want to start out?
Yes, good afternoon. Thanks for having me. My name is Jason Mays. I'm the Deputy Director of Hudson Valley Justice Center. We provide free legal services throughout the Hudson Valley for anyone whose income is below a certain level. We have offices in Yonkers, White Plains, Newburgh, and Poughkeepsie. Just recently we opened those up. The vast majority of our work is in eviction defense, and for that reason, what I'm going to say about poverty and concentration of poverty will relate to that issue. The main point I want to express is that however you go about improving historically impoverished areas, make a concerted effort to lift the people in the area out of poverty rather than pushing the people in poverty out of the area. To do this, you have to protect tenants in those target regions. The reason is tenants are already subject to eviction at alarming rates. Prior to the pandemic, north of New York City, in the cities on average, tenants were evicted, landlords filed petitions at a rate of 1 petition per every 8 tenant households. In some cities like Mount Vernon, Poughkeepsie, and Albany, the rate was 1 in 6. So you could line up the tenants, count them off, and every time you got to 6, somebody's going to court. Without protecting tenants, the policies that improve the historically impoverished areas may just push those poor tenants into new concentrations of poverty elsewhere. And as we've heard, this is likely to harm children, first because children are disproportionately subject to eviction and suffer long-term negative consequences of eviction. Children under 5 make up 9% of the population, but 12% of the evicted population, so there's a disproportionate representation there. And on average, 1 in 4 black children are at risk of eviction in any given year. I don't think anyone's mentioned the 2016 study from Harvard called Moving to Opportunity that showed children who were selected to live in and attend school in lower poverty neighborhoods ended up as adults with annual incomes that were 31% higher than the children who didn't relocate. And this was effective for people who were 13 and younger when they moved. When children are evicted from improving neighborhoods, because rents rise faster than their parents' wages, the reverse of what you see in that study is happening. Children move to higher poverty areas, which directly leads to worse outcomes for them and their kids. And you mentioned the difference between tenants and homeowners. Homeowners don't face this pressure because although improving economies raise costs and liabilities for tenants, they raise home value and property values for owners. But this raises another potential problem. ProPublica has reported about this. If we know that home values and property values generally rise with improving economies, then anyone with the funds to outbid local residents for property can realize passive gains and can effectively buy an ownership stake in that economy, even if they don't participate in it. Absentee landlords then siphon wealth out of the local residents in the form of rent. And when those investor landlords are multinational private equity firms, there's no reason to believe that this wealth will return as investment in the economy in the future, and that is happening. In 2022, MetLife Investment Management anticipated that these institutional investors will hold 7.6 million homes, or more than 40% of all single-family rentals on the market by 2030. They're already using software to collude on rents, and they may be doing other things to leverage their market share against local residents. So to protect the poorest residents from perpetual displacement, to prevent absentee speculation, the state should seek out policies and development strategies that give poor tenants some kind of equity-like stake in improving economies. That's difficult, but here are some strategies. First, give tenants a right to counsel in eviction proceedings. This will ensure that they can actually assert the now limited rights that they have. Enact a good cause eviction law. This will give tenants a right to a renewal lease. In New York, in private apartments, landlords can terminate a tenancy on proper notice for no reason. They don't have to provide a reason. So the neighborhood changes, the landlords just say, I don't want to renew your tenancy anymore, and there's nothing the tenant can do about it. They have to move. A good cause eviction law would just say that the landlord has to have good cause for doing that. Next, you could invest in limited equity co-ops, dispersed public housing, and other various social housing programs, which prevent this absentee owner speculation and allow people to enjoy a long-term stake in an improving neighborhood. And then to the extent possible, I know the schools are a local issue, but encourage local governments to include low-income affordable housing units in wealthy school districts so that people can enjoy the same kind of education. To fund this, you would have to focus on things that can't leave the state. One example is a potential funding source is a yearly rental licensing fee. According to the census, there are 3.5 million rental units in New York. If landlords had to pay $100 per unit yearly to license their rentals, that would generate $350 million for programs that might help poor tenants. Thank you for paying attention to this issue, and thanks for having us.
Thank you. And finally, Janet Frott.
Good afternoon, Senator May and esteemed committee members. My name is Janet Fry, and I'm the Deputy Executive Director of the Community Research Center of Larchmont and Mamaroneck. We are a nonprofit organization dedicated to supporting our community, particularly the most vulnerable, including immigrants and low-income residents. We've historically been a service organization, providing ESL classes and workforce development, as well as case management and legal services. Recently, we expanded to include community organizing and advocacy because the need for support is greater than we can meet. We empower our community and advocate on their behalf to improve county and state policies. Having worked for the CRC for 19 years, including as a case manager and as a DOJ legal representative, I'd like to share with you what I have personally witnessed, both in terms of the causes and the effects of poverty. I'd also like to suggest a number of policies that would alleviate poverty in our state. Of the more than 6,000 clients the CRC serve annually, more are essential workers, such as house cleaners, nannies, and day laborers. Many of our clients are undocumented and mixed-status families. The vast majority of our clients live at or below the poverty level. One of the primary causes of poverty is that many of our community members live in the shadows. They are gainfully employed, contributing to our community, but without legal status. This makes them vulnerable in many ways, including employment insecurity, substandard housing, and the constant risk of deportation. During the pandemic, New York passed the Excluded Workers Fund, which provided critical support and literally saved countless lives. Unfortunately, the Excluded Workers Fund has been exhausted, and the workers, the fathers, mothers, and children who benefited from that program have once again been forgotten and relegated to the shadows. Our current UI system has not been updated for decades and does not reflect today's economy. In addition to undocumented workers, many citizens who work as independent contractors or freelancers are excluded. The Unemployment Bridge Program will provide compensation to workers who are currently excluded from unemployment insurance. Depriving workers of unemployment benefits prevents employees from speaking up when they experience unsafe working conditions. Providing access to unemployment benefits allows us to hold bad employers accountable, making workplaces safer for everyone. Another challenge that many of our community members face is substandard housing. This is not only an effect of poverty, but also perpetuates it. There are areas of Mamaroneck which have been experiencing repeated and severe floods in recent years. You think that after the first flood, people would move elsewhere. However, due to the unaffordability of housing, these residents have no other options. And when these floods happen, the residents often experience trauma, time away from work, and lose everything. They're forced by financial necessity into living in unsafe housing conditions, which perpetuates their poverty. Thankfully, New York has well-developed laws to protect tenants from exploitation by landlords. Unfortunately, many tenants are unable to avail themselves of those protections because they cannot afford legal representation. Tenants are fearful of raising concerns about the habitability of dwellings because they fear retaliatory eviction. Statewide right to counsel would ensure that every tenant in New York has access to a lawyer when faced with potential eviction. As I mentioned earlier, many of our community members we serve are undocumented immigrants and mixed-status families, which entails its own unique challenges. When they are forced into deportation proceedings, they need legal representation. Despite contributing significantly to our communities, most undocumented immigrants are low income and cannot afford legal counsel. They frequently rely on nonprofit organizations like the CRC to support them with legal services. However, the CRC and similar organizations are at capacity and do not have enough funding to meet the tremendous need of legal services in our communities. Legal representation often makes the difference between succeeding in immigration proceedings or being separated from family and deported. When a parent is deported, the family left behind struggles that much more to make ends meet and is often faced with extreme poverty. This, in turn, places increased burden on government services and nonprofit organizations to help meet just the most basic needs of the family left behind. Access to legal representation would ensure that our community members have a fair chance at immigration proceedings. Undocumented immigrants not only contribute to our economy, they pay taxes. They pay over $1 billion in state and local taxes. Passing legislation such as the Unemployment Bridge Program, a statewide right to counsel, and access to legal representation would be 3 steps in the right direction towards alleviating poverty in New York. Thank you for your time.
Thank you as well. I wanted to ask you a question, Jason, about your program, because I carry the bill on the statewide right to counsel, but you've already got it in Hudson Valley. How is that paid for?
So in Westchester, they were the first county in the nation to pass a county level right to counsel bill. There's money included in the budget for that. To be honest, I don't know how they decided to fund that. I don't know where that money's coming from. But
Can
we're
you give
excited,
us an
ready
idea
to
of
get
the
going.
scale of the funding?
I don't have those numbers.
Okay.
It was included in the budget that just passed, but we don't know exactly how much will be allocated to create this office.
I see, okay. And are there data being collected about the impact of it in terms of, we always try to make the case for these investments actually pay off in terms of people being able to pay their taxes, pay their rent, all of those kinds of things that actually help the local economy if you make the investment up front. Is that something you are able to track?
Well, we hope so. The bill is actually called the Office of Housing Counsel, and what we hope happens is that office will track the success of the program and be able to show us how much savings we realize by offsetting stays in shelters and by keeping people in their homes rather than see them constructively evicted by poor conditions, things like this. So that's part of the goal of that office, to track those kinds of numbers and show what kind of impact this program makes.
Okay, great. Well, we'll be keeping an eye on that. That's tremendous. I'm glad to know that's happening. Let me just take a minute of my remaining time to mention Karen Aaron from Feeding Westchester wasn't able to stay here, but some of the issues about food insecurity we didn't address here today, but I just wanted to mention a couple about funding universal school meals. That did come up some. The Nourish New York program, I have done a number of events around the Double Up Food Bucks program, which is really an important way to get families the ability to feed their kids with healthy and fresh foods. And I also carry a bill about a SNAP minimum benefit program, which I hope that we'll be able to pass this year as well. So just a few of the other things that we're talking about in terms of poverty alleviation in the state. Does either of my colleagues have questions for this?
Yeah, I had a quick question on legal representation. So when I was mayor in Poughkeepsie and we got COVID relief money, it's like over $900,000 during the pandemic, and we used it in a variety of ways, food insecurity and different things, but we also hired with Legal Services of Hudson Valley an attorney to represent individuals in court with evictions. And just recently, I was talking to court people about the numbers, of pending cases, and quite high, of course, as you've noted. And so do you what is like the number of individuals that you serve, say, in the Hudson Valley?
The number of individuals we serve. I don't have that number. I'm happy to get it from our office. I mean, I work out of the White Plains office, and we have 4 offices, so to get all those numbers together, I could certainly do that.
Yeah, okay. And maybe, put me in touch with, the Hudson Valley, Newburgh, Poughkeepsie folks. Love to have a conversation with them on how that's going.
That'd be great.
I think because as I was, leaving office, evictions were really just starting. Initially they weren't, because there was a prohibition on them. We had the attorney ready, and Legal Services of Hudson Valley was doing that in other communities as well. And then in Larchmont and in the Mamaroneck, it's interesting because when you think about Larchmont and the Mamaroneck, think about those types of challenges for folks. And obviously, the issue with the flooding, and has been historic off and on. Just, do you have sort of a ballpark number on the individuals that you represent, that you would be able to help in eviction proceedings, in those communities?
We have an eviction prevention program for Mamaroneck particularly, but we also assist other communities such New Rochelle, Port Chester, White Plains, and it's a very few percentage from Larchmont, but what we do is provide rental assistance, tenant and landlord mediation, and when we need legal assistance, we refer to our partner organization, the Hudson Valley Justice Center, and also to Legal Service of the Hudson Valley if the clients we are assisting have legal status, because it depends on funding. But I think mentioning the flood is very important because evictions, it's like families being evicted by natural disasters. And just recently, families impacted by Ida, Hurricane Ida, once again were impacted by a storm Ophelia. So with Hurricane Ida, the impact was really, really significant. 1,000 families were displaced, and 375 families were actually displaced for more than 6 months. And with Storm Ophelia, only 42 families were displaced, and some of them are still displaced right now. So it's really important to talk about how floods impact evictions in a way that families have no control, but even landlords have no control of that.
If I could just say one thing about the pace of eviction proceedings. We earlier made that distinction between homeowners and tenants. If a homeowner falls behind in mortgage payments, the eviction proceeding takes years, and the bank is forced to sit down with that person in a settlement conference, and if there's a way to modify the loan so that the person can stay, they can stay, right? That way, if a person falls behind, temporarily loses income, loses their job, and they can get back on their feet, they have some time to get things together. Eviction proceedings last weeks sometimes, right? Sometimes they last months. And so there's not much time for someone to suffer a loss of income and get back on their feet.
Mm-hmm.
There's no obligation for the landlord to negotiate settlements, really. I mean, oftentimes the landlords want the money. If we can work with us to get that, then they will. But then we have this, this fact that there's no good cause requirement. So, you don't see displacement for homeowners in the way that you see displacement for tenants, because they just don't have the same kind of protections. But some of these protections, like good cause and giving them attorneys, would definitely stabilize their tenancies.
Thank you, both.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Also, a lot of people just self-evict. If they get an eviction notice, they just move out, and not even knowing that they could contest it, and that if they did contest it, they would probably win. So, yeah, it's a complicated thing. Anyway, thank you so much for your testimony. Thank you to everyone who testified today and everyone who has stayed for the day. We also received written testimony from a number of people who weren't able to be here today, and that will be on the Senate website. And I really, on behalf of my colleagues and the Cities 2 Committee and the whole New York State Senate, I really am deeply grateful for the work that all of you are doing and the wisdom you have brought to us today. Thank you, and that concludes today's hearing.
Thank you.